I don't love the grading system, but I can talk about like what I thought of each player and where in the board I had them, stuff like that. Team by team would be better. Oh, for yeah, I could do that too. Yeah, if not do it however, I'll do a team by team either way. I think you're right on that. I don't know if I'll ship this over to YouTube. I'll definitely have to cut out this whole first half hour, but could do that. Alright, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to break down every NFL draft pick. We're going to look team by team, see who had the best draft, and whose draft was not very good. Alright, starting up, here's the Cardinal. Okay, we're not doing that. Not doing that. Thank you, Mel. Take a look at the draft. You see Arizona Cardinals, Carson Beck, 65, big arm, little bit of mobility. He's got some potential, but I don't know. There's some quarterbacks on the board. I like a little bit better. Who was a quarterback you would have liked better? Oh, Nussmeier. Take a look at Garrett Nussmeier. Thought he had potential to go here in this range. Falls the seventh round of the draft. Steal the draft. Reminded me of last year. Shador Sanders, my favorite draft pick ever. Falls to Cleveland Browns. All right. Yeah, we'll go team by team. Um, yeah. All right. You know what? No intro. We're just going to start off with the Colts because they're my quite literally on ESPN. They're marked as my favorite team. They come up first. So we'll start with the Colts. CJ Allen, I wasn't really mocking him first round. I thought he was a first round caliber type of prospect. I do think I don't want to say he's limited as an athlete. He's just not the most athletic linebacker, but I think you can get away with that as far as linebackers are concerned. Jacob Rodriguez was my ideal linebacker for the Colts because of the playmaking turnover ability that he has. CJ Allen didn't show that as much, obviously. Nobody did. Um, but I like the idea of plugging him into the defense. I think he can be your Mike linebacker for years. So I think he'll start pretty early and be a good player for us. That's kind of what my thoughts on him were the entire time for whoever would end up taking him. And I don't mind that it was us where we got him. And then kind of similar analysis for AJ Halsey. I thought he'd have the same face. Interesting. I think I think AJ Halsey was. I think he's more of a box safety. I know we've got to list him here as a free safety in the roster, but shout out to what's bro's name? Icy seems to have the best roster so far. Uh, Playboy Ice. Shout out to him for the roster. Um, yeah, I think Halsey's more of a box guy. We'll see. I mean, he's a decent athlete. He's got some range, but he's probably more of a box guy. I do wonder if maybe he and Bynum start. I know we signed Jonathan Owens, Mr. Simone Biles here, but does Hunter Wooler maybe work his way onto the field as like our third safety, and maybe Halsey plays kind of the mid level of the defense, and Bynum plays the deep role. But I don't know how much you're going to get Hunter Wooler on the field, so I don't know. But again, much like CJ Allen, I think AJ Halsey works his way into a starting role on this team pretty early, and to get him at it doesn't say which overall pick it was. The 14th pick of the third round was that like 74 ish. That doesn't say. Oh no. Let me bring up my database here. I need these things to work in tandem. That's not what that was. That was my Colts roster database. Round three. AJ Halsey was 78. And I would have been comfortable with us taking him at uh, 53, where we got CJ Allen. So thought that was a good pick. The official Skill Amigo database brought to you by Microsoft Excel. Shout out Microsoft. I mentioned earlier I'm going to have to pay more attention to the consensus board going forward because it was pretty spot on for the most part. Colts, let's see. Obviously, we didn't have a first round pick. That was our second and third. So only two day one and two picks. However, there's still some more impact players I think we got, such as Jalen Farmer. Farmer, excuse me. In the fourth round, I had a day two, like third, early fourth round grade on him, and we got him in the fourth. I think he starts also sooner rather than later. I don't know if that'll be over Goncalves or if Goncalves will just move out to right tackle over Travis, which I'm not huge on Jalen Travis right now. I think he needs more development. I don't know if I would say Farmer doesn't need development also. So I think we could still benefit from signing a veteran, either right guard or right tackle. The rest of the O line, I mean, I like. I'm not this high on Bernard Ryman. I've talked about before. Madden's got him at an 86, and I know PFF loves him, but looking at the O line, I think we could benefit still, and that's kind of why I thought we would have kept Braden Smith. He ends up going to Houston, and Houston drafted some O linemen to set up replacing him already. So, but I like the idea of Farmer. I think he can be a starter down the line. And I promise I'm not going to be super positive about every pick, but Bryce Botcher from Oregon. I like the idea of him. I don't know if you'll want him and CJ Allen on the field together is the only thing. As like the only two linebackers. If you're playing base 4-3, like old school base, um, with Akeem Davis Gaither on the field as well, I guess that could work out. The Colts just really desperately needed linebackers. Jalen Carlies was kind of penciled in as a possible starter last year, and then he got hurt and didn't play. So we've pretty much been looking for linebackers since Darius Leonard became Shaq Leonard, and I like the idea of these two guys. We'll see how they pan out. I think I had Botcher as like a mid to late day three guy, and we got him in the fifth or a late fourth. So yeah, I think that was proper value. The first one that I thought was maybe a bit of a reach, but I understand it was George Gums Jr. Decent athlete, a little undersized compared to what the Colts normally draft on the edge. Because you see the other edges we have. Latu's 260, Michael Clemens is 280, JT's 260, Arden Key's smaller at 240, Caden Curry, who we'll get to, is 260, and then even like Colby Wooden, who isn't exactly an edge, but it's only 270. Adebaware is not exactly an edge, but he's 280. So taking a guy that's 245 is a little against what Ballard would do, but at the same time, he does typically like, freaky athlete type guys. So I get that with some upside there, and maybe even some tweener ability to play linebacker. We'll see. And then we followed that up immediately with Caden Curry, who's more traditional edge setting. You know, going to defend the run a little better. Hopefully, still provide some pass rush ability at 6'3", 260. And of course, I like Caden. He's from Indiana, from Ohio State. So, and yeah, reuniting Curry with, or reuniting JT with Caden Curry. I like that. I always like I really thought the Raiders would have taken Elijah Surratt when he was still on the board, just to get some familiarity with a couple of guys on your roster. I think is always a good idea. Little fun fact: all 11 starters from Ohio State title team defense have been drafted. Quite impressive. That is a pretty good. That's a pretty good recruiting tool, I would say. If I'm a defensive player and Ohio State comes calling, it's like, yeah, we won the championship, and all our defensive players got drafted. Yeah, that could be you. And as a fan, that is cool to see, just in general. So that's the Colts. Oh, that's not it. That's not it. Hold on. Hold on. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We got two more picks. And there's one. Seth McGowan. Kind of redundant, I feel. I thought we could have used. I keep saying another guy that we haven't really had the type of player since we lost is Naheem Hines, who great kick returner, yeah, but more than that, a really good pass catching back out of the backfield. And we took DJ Giddens last year, and he couldn't really get on the field. He was a fifth round pick. Couldn't really get on the field because he's basically just a backup for JT. He's not really any different, and obviously he's not as good. But like the skill set isn't quite different enough to put him out there over Taylor. With Seth McGowan, I kind of see the same thing, where he didn't have a ton of catches. He also had some off the field stuff where he didn't play college football for 3 years. He went from 2020 to 2024 without playing. So, uh, I don't know. I kind of liked him. Like he was a top 10 back for me in this class, but I don't know how he exactly fits in with what we need. I still think we need another back here. And somebody who we lost right here is Tyler Goodson to your Falcons, and not a great receiving back, not a Naheem Hines exactly, but I thought we would like to replace that kind of a role, and I don't think we really did that. So I think that's something we need to monitor for a free agent pickup. However, the final pick I have no complaints about. That would be Dion Burks in the seventh round at pick, if I can find it, 254. Um, Quite possibly the best value pick of the entire draft. I had him. Okay, he's not wearing number 87. I can tell you that. I had him going as high as very, very early second round in my mocks. I think there's a world where we don't pay Josh Downs because we are now paying Alec Pierce a ton, and I don't know if Downs. I like Downs. I think he's been good. Obviously, we can't see his 2025 stats here, but he's been good, but he's not been consistently really good enough. I don't think to be like, okay, well, he's a $20 million per year guy, and we need to pay him. I have no idea. I didn't hear anything as to why he fell. I think he's a very good athlete. Okay, the one thing I did hear was his production this past year. That's really the only thing I heard as to why he might have fallen. Unless there's something out there that people haven't said. Um, his production in general. So in 5 years, and he barely played as a true freshman. He had one catch. But in 5 years, he had 151 catches, 1,700 yards, 14 touchdowns, only 11 yards a catch. He did have a long of 84 his third year at Purdue. Um, didn't have any return touchdowns, returned only 14 kicks. So the production really wasn't there. But I thought his testing, just as a pure athlete, I thought there were kind of a lot of receivers that went that I didn't have as high as Deion Burks. Nobody seemed to have as high as Deion Burks. Everyone seemed to be pretty high on Deion Burks, and he just didn't go until 254. So I don't really know why that is. And I think this was great value. And like I said, I think there's a chance that he just works his way into the lineup by virtue of us not paying Josh Downs next year. And we end up losing Downs, but we have Burks. I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but I really like Deion Burks' pick. That was our draft. Again, I'm not going to do grades, but I really liked it. And I'm not the biggest Chris Ballard fan. I think most Colts fans aren't at this point. We've won, is it zero? It's either one or zero. I can't remember right now. Playoff games in his 10-year tenure, which is pretty bad either way. But I really have no complaints with this draft. The only thing I thought we might get that we didn't draft at all was a corner. But you look at our corner depth, and I know we We were saying we might trade Kenny Moore. Javarius Ward has concussion issues that he still is thinking about retiring, so that's kind of scary. But we picked up Cam Taylor Britt. We still have Mekhi Blackman. Still have Jalen Jones on roster. Justin Wally was a rookie we took last year in the third at 80. So, corner wasn't a huge need. And of course, getting Sauce with 2 first-round picks and Adonai Mitchell. Um, so, yeah, other than a receiving back, I guess, we took a power back. That's kind of it. That's kind of the only thing that we didn't take. So I'm happy with it. We'll see how they all pan out, of course. But as far as prospects, I like the idea. Going to the next team, I kind of did go over the Cardinals already, but I'll do that again. Jeremiah Love, I'm going to kind of echo what most people think. Great player, maybe the best overall player in the draft. I don't know if he really elevates the Cardinals over the next 5 years more so than a different position could have. But the thing is, if they take Arvell Reese or if they take Sonny Styles or a lineman, I don't know if they really elevate them that much more. So you take Jeremiah Love, and at least you have a star in the making. Yes, yeah, hopefully our quarterback can be healthy. And if Daniel Jones does get hurt, hopefully Anthony Richardson can be healthy and not be bad. I agree. So with Love, I can't hate the pick. I don't love it. It's fine to me, I would say. And of course, this was a crowded running back room already. James Conner, Tyler Algier, Trey Benson, and even Corey Kiner. Bam Knight. But yeah, I mean he's the most talented one here in this group. I think maybe they can get a late pick out of Trey Benson and run it with the 2 veterans and Jeremiah Love. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. Not the biggest team need, but when he's the best player in the draft, not a completely wasted pick. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shout out Corey Kiner. Definitely not wasted. When the Jets took David Bailey over Arvell Reese, there's a chance. I liked David Bailey as a prospect probably more than some on the consensus. He seemed to be kind of lower for consensus, and some people freaked out that he went to. I get it, and he could be a very good pass rusher, and there's a world where Arvell Reese just isn't a great pass rusher. So, once David Bailey goes at 2, Cardinals, I mean, maybe I'm sure they had offers to trade down, but if you just like Jeremiah Love that much, you take Jeremiah Love. I don't mind it. And then to help him out, they go with Chase Basantis. And maybe he starts right away at a guard spot. Maybe Suamalo moves over here to the right side because I certainly wouldn't want to start Matt Pryor at right guard in the year 2026. But I don't know if Jaden Williams is a pick we'll get to. I don't know if they did enough on the offensive line for me to really love their draft as a whole. But I do like getting Basantis. And then Carson Beck, I talked about him a lot already on the stream, and I had a lot to write about on Discord. The gist is, again, I don't hate it. It's not an amazingly great pick. I'm not going to sit here and say Carson Beck's going to be a top 15 quarterback in the NFL ever. But at 65, it's not 35. People saying the day of the draft he's going to go round 1 all of a sudden. I'm grateful they didn't take him in the first round, right? Like if they took him, if they traded up with the pick that they used on Basantis and took Carson Beck at the end of the first round just so they could get the 5th-year option, that I would have had a major problem with. That would have probably even had me crashing out. But the crash outs over him going 65, that's basically where I had him. I had him like round 3, round 4 guy. And I know people have some personality things with him, and the perception of him is not great right now. I just think he was a slightly better prospect than what people gave him credit for. And I don't mind taking him to 65 for a team that, yes, could very well be in the QB market next year still, because you got Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew. You don't have, say, Patrick Mahomes, who the Chiefs uh, ended up taking Nussmeier in the seventh. Like, yeah, that was a great value for them. I don't know if Garrett Nussmeier really ever becomes anything on the Cardinals either. So it's a fine pick in my opinion. I didn't hate it. Again, is he ever going to be a really good starter in the NFL? Probably not. It's unlikely. Is there at least a little bit of upside? I think he could even play this year if they don't want to trot out Jacoby or Gardner Minshew all season. I think Carson Beck is a very smart, low risk pick. You acknowledge that they didn't get a team changing draft pick with Love. But what if Carson Beck pulls a Bo Nix on us? Is actually a great NFL QB. And if he's not, what did they sacrifice? Yeah, that's kind of the good thing about taking him at 65 and not first, second round. Okay, I'm not going to read that part. Honestly, maybe that's part of why people are crashing out, though. You know what I mean? Possibly. If he looked like Trevor Lawrence, would he have been a first round pick? I don't know. I mean, if he was as good as Trevor Lawrence, he would have been, but he's not. I don't know. I think taking him in the third is proper value. If you just really don't like him and you're lower on him, I can see why you'd be upset that they would take him at 65. I don't think it's that bad. We'll move on though. They got Caleb Proctor, not to be confused with Caden Proctor, in the fourth. He's going to be in here somewhere. Okay, he's listed as a D tackle. He actually did bulk up. I had him listed at 287. He's up to 298, according to this at least. He was at 291 on the draft page. So I'm not sure how much he weighs, but he did bulk up a little bit. The Cardinals do have a lot of these guys that are like 300 and under pounds on the line. Like Walter Nolan's right at 300. LJ Collier's right at 300. Zach Carter's 290. Darius Robinson was a first round pick who hasn't done a lot. He's 285. Dante Stills is right at 300. Jonah Williams 275. For a 3-4 team, they have a lot of these type of guys. I liked Caleb Proctor as a prospect. He kind of started just shooting up the board and ends up going in the fourth. It seems like that was the consensus. Oh, and Jordan Birch, who's 280, who's listed as a Sam linebacker. All right. And even Savin Collins at 270 is kind of an edge. Not exactly a D line, a 3-4 D lineman, but an edge. Um, it's a fine pick. You know, if he can get some pass rush from that kind of a position, that's good for them. That helps. They didn't take an actual pass rusher in this class, so hopefully he can provide some of that. Reggie Virgil. This is not the type of receiver that they needed, in my opinion. I think he's probably just depth, as they already have a lot of depth. But um, maybe Duvernay can provide this role that I keep mentioning for them. But again, your quarterbacks are Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew, and Carson Beck this year, so I don't know if any of those guys are going to be able to capitalize on a skill set like Devin Duvernay. And I don't know if Reggie Virgil really contributes much. So didn't love that one. I mean, it is a fifth round pick, so it's not like, oh, it's a huge reach. I hate it. It's fine. Carson Scharrer, linebacker out of Iowa. Again, I had him. I had him a little lower than some of the linebackers I went after, but you're talking about a sixth-round linebacker pick. It's fine. And finally, Jaden Williams. I don't think was even in my database. I don't know how I missed him. Out of Ole Miss, not Mississippi State. Um, so I'll be honest. I don't know a ton about him. He's listed at 6'4", 320 actually, and probably more of a guard. So they didn't really get a tackle in this class. So unless you think Christian Jones can be that right tackle, they're probably another team that's looking at a right tackle in free agency. And like I said, Suamalo, one of these guys will end up playing right guard. I would imagine it'd be Suamalo because he has more experience there. John Gaines, I think, played some last year. So yeah, if I was going to give this team a grade, it would probably still not be super high. So if anybody's freaking out that I didn't hate Carson Beck as a pick, just be aware. It's not one of my favorite drafts. Next up is Bullets Atlanta Falcons, who probably is one of my favorite drafts. Starting off with Avian Terrell, fell a little bit. Um, he had I forget if it was an actual injury or if he just pulled up at the pro day, and maybe there was some concern about that. There was concern about maybe just him as an overall athlete at his size, not being the best athlete. Is he a nickel? Can he stick on the boundary? Stuff like that was kind of the biggest concerns with him. I think he's just a really good player, though. First round quality in the second round, love to see it. I think he could have very well gone first round, and as it ends up, he ends up being the pick 48, so like a mid second rounder. It's still very high, and I think it was probably a little lower than where the value was for him. So really good pick. Unites with his brother. You gotta like that. Then Zachariah Branch. He of course had a thing come out this past week before the draft that you don't love to see that, but I still think he was a day two prospect. Um, he's very small. He's the type of player that I keep wanting the Cardinals to take. And I mentioned Rondale Moore earlier, of course, RIP. But that was the type of player that I think the Cardinals needed, and they had that. They didn't capitalize on it, and then they let him go into free agency, and or actually they trade him to the Falcons at one point. So yeah, both of these teams needed a player like this. The Falcons got it, the Cardinals didn't. Could use a few more corners on the roster. Yeah, I'd agree with that. However, there's one guy that is not listed at corner. That's basically a corner. Actually, he is on this roster. Billy Bowman is kind of already a nickel, and Mike Hughes and Clark Phillips are kind of already nickel defenders. But you have your safeties now with Bates and Watts. You could certainly use another corner, but I think Terrell kind of is that other corner. Because if he can stick on the outside, you have these nickel options, especially Billy Bowman. Get CJ Henderson out of here. Uh, yeah, it's not a bad group by any means. But yeah, I do like the addition of Zachariah Branch. That's the type of receiver I think they needed. Now, he did bring in Dotson, and apparently Zacchaeus is back. But long term, let's not fool ourselves into thinking Jahan Dotson all of a sudden is going to become uh, Devontae Smith because he was with the Eagles. After that, Kendall Daniels, who's kind of a tweener hybrid edge linebacker, safety even type of player. Um, he's a 61 overall. I think he'll be a little higher than that as a fourth round pick, but he doesn't. I'm not going to say he reminds me of Isaiah Simmons because Isaiah Simmons was drafted very, very high for a reason. Kendall Daniels, I guess you could say, is a poor man's Isaiah Simmons, where he doesn't really have a defined position yet, and it'll be interested to see. Probably ends up being more of a traditional linebacker at his size, but maybe he does rush the passer a little bit. After that was Ontario Thompson, who was also not on my board. I did not have him in my database. And am I just missing him? Yeah, there he is. Out of Washington. Um, okay, who are we talking about here? I was expecting Washington to turn into a playmaker all year long. It never happened. Washington, 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 Washington. I'm trying to think. Washington, Washington, Washington. Receiver, Washington. Oh, right here, Casey Washington. Oh, okay, I do recall having him in the Falcons rebuild 2 years ago. 6th round pick. I don't think he was in my database when he was drafted. As a matter of fact, I didn't know much about him out of Illinois, but he's here. He's hanging around. Could provide something. I think was it David Sills was getting reps last year, so somebody's got to get depth reps. The next linebacker that I was excited about for you was Harold Perkins, who also is he's very much a tweener. Um, he's kind of too small to be a traditional edge rusher, and he's kind of too small to be a run defending linebacker. So I think his primary role will just be rushing the passer with his athleticism, trying to get to the QB. I don't mind taking a chance on a player like that, especially in the late sixth round. I thought he was drafted much, much, much later than I thought he would be. And once upon a time, probably a first round mocked player. So don't mind taking that at 215. Was the second to last pick in the sixth round. And then ended the draft with Big E out of Ohio State. Um, Honestly, I don't know. He couldn't win a starting job at Ohio State, which, maybe that makes him a good depth piece. I don't know. And you're taking that in the seventh round as a developmental tackle. It's fine. I didn't really think he'd get drafted, to be honest, but it's fine. One of my more, top to bottom, not maybe a super complete draft, but still one of my favorite ones. Baltimore Ravens did a lot. Starting off with Vega Ione, who was probably the most mocked pick behind Fernando Mendoza to the Raiders. It kind of just, unless he went super high, like maybe the Bengals would have taken him at 10, but they didn't because they traded that pick. Um, this is kind of just where the value fit the team need, so nobody was surprised. And then Zion Young in the second round, again, nobody was surprised because they had already taken Mike Green, and they still needed an edge despite trading, or trading for Max Crosby and then not, and then signing Trey Hendrickson. Tavius Robinson, Adisa Isaac, really their only other possible pass rushers on the team outside of Hendrickson and Mike Green. So Zion Young, probably talent wise, probably already their second best pass rusher. We'll see how he can do in the NFL. But then there were back to back receiver picks, one I really didn't get and one I really liked. So, first of all, Jacoby Lane. Big body, yeah. That's kind of the best I can say about him. That's kind of the positive is that he's a big body. I didn't really see it with Jacoby Lane. He's very young. Maybe he develops. You had Tez Walker. You still have Bateman. I didn't really see a need to take Jacoby Lane. Maybe you can tell him to beef up and becomes a tight end, although they drafted some tight ends. Didn't really like that pick, especially not in the mid third round. I had him as a solid in the mix, like midday 3 prospect. And then they follow that up in the fourth round with Elijah Surratt, who I had as a midday 2 prospect. If you just switch these guys, I mean, maybe it looks a little better, but you can't really do that. So Jacoby Lane, I thought, not a great pick. Elijah Surratt, I thought, very, very good pick. So we'll see what kind of roles these guys carve out with Flowers, Bateman, and Tez Walker already on the roster. After the receivers, they took their first tight end in Matthew Hibner. He was kind of just in like a bottom cluster of tight ends that I had in this class. A little early for me. And the tight end that they took later on, I had higher. So we'll circle back to him. Chandler Rivers, a nickel corner that I liked in this class. He'll be competing to get on the field right away, I would say. So, good value to take a nickel in the fifth round. Then they hit up tight end again and got Josh Cuevas out of Alabama. A bit smaller. This isn't exactly taking Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar, but they did need depth tight ends, and they got that. So we'll see if those two guys develop. And then apparently Bashadi really wanted Adam Randall. He really wanted Adam Randall. Uh, Future Derrick Henry, possibly. He's about the same size. Not quite the athlete. I don't actually see him becoming Derrick Henry, but it's hard to be Derrick Henry. So a very Ravens type of linebacker. Like Justice Hill is the type of guy that I'm talking about for the Colts, by the way. Just a receiving back that can come in, catch the ball out of the backfield. I mentioned Heem Hines, obviously. Imagine Derrick Henry. Heck, imagine two of them. And there he is. There's another one. Funny. They drafted a punter, and my first thought was, don't they have Jordan Stout? Well, no, they don't. He signed with the Giants. He followed Harbaugh over to the Giants. So it's already been 4 years. Some guys you're like, man, he's already on another team. I recall Jordan Stout, and I was like, oh yeah, it's been 4 years. So Ryan Eckley, new punter for the Ravens in the 6th round. If you really like a specialist, taking him in the 6th or 7th round isn't too bad. 6-7. Then they hit up D-line with Rashawn Benny in the 7th round. I had him early day 3, probably. And he ends up going late 7th. So good pick there. And then they come back on the offensive line and take Evan Bernston out of Northwestern. Developmental interior lineman, can provide some depth, some versatility. Not a bad pick there. So pretty good pick. Pretty good draft top to bottom for the Ravens. Transfer portal is crazy. Punters following coaches to new teams. The NFL transfer portal. Some guys getting less in the transfer portal in the NFL than they are in college. So pretty much the same type of thing. Buffalo Bills are up next. Did I like their draft? Yeah, for the most part. TJ Parker, I was higher on. He was my number one player going into the year, and of course, he didn't quite hit that. But to get him early 2nd round, I thought was good value. Davis and Igbinosun, I didn't love. They did attack secondary pretty well in this draft. So Igbinosun, he'll get reps because they don't like Christian Benford's. I don't want to call him a nickel because he's bigger, but he's not the greatest athlete. Maxwell Harrison, I don't exactly want to call him a boundary guy, but he's not a nickel because he is a really good athlete. Kind of the opposite. D. Alford in the nickel. Dorian Strong's there. Yeah, I mean, there's a world where he gets reps as a rookie, but I don't know. And it was a touch early, in fairness. I do like him, but just a smidge early for me. Jude Bowery was their next pick in the 4th round. I thought that was a good one. They can kind of stash him and develop him behind Deion Dawkins. Skylar Bell, also in the 4th, was really good value. They needed to get a receiver in this class, I thought. Yes, you got DJ Moore. You still have Shakir. I like Josh Palmer. He didn't do a ton last year. Keon Coleman, I think, still has some ability and some potential, but more of a deep, physical deep threat type of guy. Skylar Bell is kind of a skill set they didn't exactly have. So him, Coleman, Palmer, Shakir, and Moore, that's a really good receiving core all of a sudden. Maybe there's a world where Stephon Diggs comes back. I don't know. Caleb's Elam's Orr was the next pick at linebacker at a TCU. This is good depth at linebacker for them. Jalen Kilgore, another secondary player. I had him listed at corner/safety. If he just is a safety, that's fine. One of the youngest players in the class as well. Zane Durant. I really liked him, the idea of him, and going to this type of team, who I believe is moving more towards a 3-4 defense. he is basically a 3-4 defensive end. So I like that kind of a fit there. Toriano Pride, another secondary player. He was the fastest corner, I believe, at the combine, and I'm not seeing him, so maybe he couldn't fit him on the roster, but he should be here somewhere. Geno Stone's also in here. I guess he couldn't fit Pride on the roster yet, but they also took a punter, Tommy Doman. I think he was my number one rated punter. I didn't I didn't break down kicker, punter, long snapper tape as much as maybe some experts in the field, but he was my top punter. And then Armaj Reed Adams was a guy that was getting mocked. I think I had him in some first round mocks very, very late last year and very, very early this year. So I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Maybe they get something out of him. Seventh round pick. Why not? Kind of forgot he was in the class, to be honest. Next up, Carolina Panthers taking Monroe Freeling with their first draft pick. Didn't expect them to address offensive line with their first pick, but if you do look at it, Aquanu, contract year, and he's hurt. He's probably going to miss the entire season. They drafted Rasheed Walker, who will start in all likelihood at left tackle for them this year, but only for a year. A great value at a year for $4 million for a starting caliber left tackle. And then Taylor Moton is going to be 32, turning 33 next year. So you get Monroe Freeling. I don't know if he's going to play left tackle necessarily for you. He might end up playing right tackle if they move on Moton after this year. The thing is, he probably doesn't play a ton this year unless there's injuries, which you're already down at Quanu. There very well could be an injury, and you could kind of just work him in to the starting lineup. So I don't mind that. At 19, I thought it was good value for him as well. I think Mullet in the draft that we did, I think you picked him at 6 for the Browns, and I had him going that high in some mocks. I wouldn't have been shocked if they took him. We'll get to the Browns in a bit, but Lee Hunter was their next pick. D-line depth, probably plays a lot this year. Bobby Brown is okay. Cam Jackson is a big nose from last year's class out of Florida. I like the addition of Hunter. Chris Brazzell in the third, I thought was good value for him. Gives them a burner at the same size as McMillan, basically. Kind of completes their receiving core. I like that. Will Lee in the secondary was fine. I thought maybe I was a little higher on him than some people, and he still ends up going in the fourth round, so I thought that was good value. Sam Hecht as a possible future starting center in the fifth. Really good value. Zakee Wheatley, also in the fifth round. Possible starting safety option. Really good value for them there. And finally, Jackson Kawach, linebacker from Miami, Ohio. I did not have him on my database. Another one in full disclosure. There he is. Don't have much to say about him other than maybe he can be a special teamer. He actually started at Ohio State. He was a walk-on. Did not play in 2 years. And yeah, man, maybe, who knows? Maybe he already just will be better than Trevin Wallace, who's not very good. My friend's wife taught him in high school. Found that out a few hours ago. Well, there you go. Shout out Jackson Kawach. We'll have to watch him closely and follow his career. Okay, Bears. Also, maybe one of the better value picks of the entire draft in Dylan Thiedemann. We'll pretend I didn't say that. Dylan Thiedemann at 25. I had him going as high as, I think, Dallas at 12 throughout the draft process. Most of the time, I settled on the Vikings at 18. And he ends up going at 25 to the Bears. So, thought that was great value. They needed another starting safety with Kobe Bryant. They lost their top 3 safeties. Now we got Cam Lewis in here, who's more of a nickel. I would say. So I really like the addition of Thieneman here. I said my comparison for him right after they took him was Chris Conti, but good. If you remember Chris Conti. Next up was Logan Jones, and I saw some differing opinions on this. I thought he was maybe the second or third best center in the class, and I'm fine with them taking him. I know TFG was kind of low because he's an older prospect, sneaky athlete, sneaky athletic. Yeah, first one in, last one out. Hard worker. Will get the job done. He basically is Garrett Bradbury as a prospect, and you've got Garrett Bradbury, but Garrett Bradbury's 30. Yeah, Logan Jones, I mean, he's an older prospect, but he's not 30 yet, so I don't mind taking Logan Jones there. And then Sam Roush, he ended up being my tight end 3. So to get him after some other tight ends went that I was pretty low on, I thought it was good value. And I know also I keep bringing up TFG. I mean, that's who I watched. TFG was like, oh, so they're trading Cole Kmet. I don't know if they do. I like the combination of Loveland and Kmet. You can develop Sam Roush. I mean, maybe eventually. Cole Kmet's signed through 2027, so maybe he plays this year and then they trade him in the offseason. Who knows? But right now, you've got Loveland, you've got Kmet. That's a really good tight end duo, and you can develop Sam Roush behind him. Xavier Thomas, um, I thought it was a good pick. He's a very good athlete. He kind of completes the receiving core to a degree. You've got room, Burden. Of course, you got rid of DJ Moore. Cleve Raymond's more of a obviously he's a return guy. I would say he's more of a gadget. If anything, he's not going to play a ton on offense. So Xavier Thomas maybe can be a slot. I think they could still use another receiver here, so we'll see if they sign someone. But thought it was a fine pick in the third round. And then Malik Muhammad in the fourth. Jalen Johnson's great. Kyler Gordon and Tarek Stevenson are decent. So getting another corner in behind them, didn't mind that pick. In the fourth round, Keyshawn Elliott in the fifth, I thought was a really good value pick. If I can find him. Here he is. Um, they did lose Tremaine Edmonds. They replaced him with Devin Bush. They didn't desperately need linebacker, but to have somebody developing behind their starters, Keyshawn Elliott in the fifth was a very good value. Jackson Vandenberg, full disclosure, he was the second to final pick that I added on my entire draft board. I just very, very recently became aware of who he was. And he ends up going late sixth round. So I was happy I at least had him on my board. Um, he was kind of buried in the DTs in like the 20s, but that's kind of the range he ended up going. Now, this roster has him listed at 340. I've got him listed at 300. So that's a pretty big discrepancy, but we'll see if he can be a rotational run stopper for the Bears here. And that was their draft. So I liked their draft top to bottom. There wasn't really a pick I didn't like, to be honest. Next up, Cincinnati Bengals. They, of course, traded for that man right there, Dexter Lawrence. With their first pick in the second round being Cassius Howell. Um, I didn't think they needed edge all that terribly bad after signing Boye Mafe. Shamar Stewart and Miles Murphy both being former first round picks. But I like the addition of Cassius Howell. It gives them a good rotation of 4 guys that you can kind of. You hope Boye Mafe is worth the contract, I guess. And then, of course, that's not the actual contract he signed. It's a lot more than that. And then you hope to see some more development out of Stewart, especially Murphy. We'll see. He hasn't really shown much, and he's an older guy than Stewart at this point. But throwing in Cassius Howell into the mix, I thought that was a good idea. Early second round. Takario Davis in the third. He was a former first round hype type of guy in last year's class who ended up going back, transferred from Arizona to Washington. I don't mind this in the third round. It was maybe a touch early, but big physical corner. Don't mind it. Connor Liu in the fourth was another really good value. Stewart was a bust. All Bengals fans around me hate on him. I will defend him a little bit. He was only a rookie. He started off the season hurt after the contract dispute, so I hope he develops a little bit more than just always busts after a year. We'll see. If he doesn't, then yeah. I mean, he was a combine freak, and they got him at 17, which I thought was pretty good value at that time. So I hope he does show some more in the second year. Yeah, I assume that's probably true. Anytime you have that from, especially a rookie, it's like, dude, your contract is slotted. Just sign the contract. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the verbiage holdup was. So I don't know too much as to why he was so adamant about holding out like that. You just kind of hope he doesn't suck, and you hope he can provide more than what Miles Murphy's been able to do. He did have 3 sacks as a rookie. I don't know if he has a sack since. So, but yeah, Connor Liu. This was a great pick. He tore his ACL mid season last year. Can sit behind Ted Karras and recover. Eventual starting center type of guy. That's a great pick in the fourth round. He was my number one center. So in the fourth round, that's really good value. Colby Young out of Georgia, I was a little lower on him. Not because I didn't like him necessarily, just there were so many really good receivers in this class. He kind of just is the backup for T. Higgins, excuse me, and that's fine. You know, if he's your fourth, fifth receiver, I think that's fine. Brian Parker in the sixth, another really good value. Played right tackle. I had him listed at right tackle, but also with guard flexibility, and he was announced as a center. So because they took Connor Liu, I'm assuming they're planning on him being a guard. And of course, this roster has him at right tackle, but I would say he could maybe even start at guard for them if they don't want Riser to start all year. We'll see. But I like both of those picks on the O line. And then Jack Injuries at tight end in the seventh. Like he was way higher on my board than a lot of tight ends that went above him. And to go to a team that has Gesicki, Drew Sample, Eric All, and Tanner Hudson as their tight end options seems like a good fit. Seems like a good opportunity. And their last pick being Landon Robinson, who's another kind of undersized D tackle. I thought they kind of were already set with their D tackles, so I don't know if he's actually going to make the team. But out of Navy, it's a cool story. We'll see. We'll see if he can work his way through some of these guys. Maybe they also trade a guy like BJ Hill, and that opens up some playing time because you get Dexter Lawrence. They also signed Jonathan Allen. I don't know where these guys get playing time exactly, so we'll see about that. I like this draft. It's not amazing. Now you also factor in that they got Dexter Lawrence, so if you do that, it kind of is pretty good. Next up was the Browns, and for the first time, maybe ever, I don't really have a gripe about a Browns draft. I thought this was a really solid draft. Spencer Fano was my number 2 right tackle, but if he ends up playing left tackle, that's really good value to get at 9. KC Concepcion, I was a little lower on. They get him at pick 24. Thought that was maybe a little high, and then they follow it up with Denzel Boston, who I had higher. So setting up the offense for whoever's going to be their quarterback of the future. They may never have a quarterback of the future. I don't know, but yeah, that's 3 back to back to back really solid offensive picks to start the draft, and then late second round they get Emmanuel McNeil Warren in the secondary. Thought that was a great pick. Had him going to the Bears quite often at 25. So really good value there. Austin Barber, Mullet, I remember you saying something about In fact, I'll search it up on Discord. Something about Florida like rushing him back or something during the season, and I was like, yeah, I mean he's one of the top tackles in the class. Don't know if I'm going to find it quickly, but yeah, here it is. Um, Austin Barber. Oh, okay. So it was during a game. Austin Barber's helmet came off, so he had to sit for a play, which carries a 10-second runoff. Florida called a timeout to keep him in the game. They declined to run off, and I said to that, yeah, just to keep Barber in the game. What he probably should have done was let the clock run down and then call a timeout. I do remember it being a weird situation, but I thought also Austin Barber was good enough to where it was worth calling the timeout. Now he doesn't end up going super high. He goes, mid to late third round. If he's your left tackle of the future, maybe he ends up moving to right as well. Fano does play left. They did a lot of work on this offensive line this offseason. Obviously, they had these two guys. They still have DeJuan Jones, signed Zion Johnson, signed Kendrick Green, Elgton Jenkins, kept Tevin Jenkins, signed Titus Howard. I think that was a trade. And they did a lot of work, and they got two uh, starting caliber tackle options for the future. So I like the Austin Barber pick. Oh man, they got Justin Jefferson. Not quite the same Justin Jefferson, but a good linebacker prospect in the fifth round. Not quite a elite top three at worst wide receiver in the NFL, but you know, nice prospect. Joe Royer in the fifth round. Is that a good likeness for Joe Royer? I'm not so sure about that. Team Justin Jefferson. Can we get Justin Jefferson? We have Justin Jefferson at home. Justin Jefferson at home. Who knows? Maybe he could be the linebacker of Justin Jefferson's. There it is. After Joe Royer, they took another tight end in Taylon Green. No, I like Taylon Green. I don't know if I see. I say tight end. He's probably going to end up as a receiver. Bengals tweet was the Cleveland Browns select Terrell Pryor, and I think best case scenario, he actually shows something as a QB and he gets a chance and he actually is good. I think the real most likely scenario is he moves to wide receiver and is just such a good freak athlete that he actually can produce a little bit as a receiver. He's been very adamant he wants to stay at QB, and that's cool. I think his best shot to actually playing for this team is at receiver. Now, I say that, and then I look at the QBs, and I'm reminded this isn't exactly the best QB group. So we'll see. And then they actually did take another tight end in Carson Ryan, who I don't see listed. He's got Gillenborg in here already, but I don't see Carson Ryan. Unfortunate. So, and by the way, I did like the value of where they took Taylon Green, the top of the sixth round. Um, that being said, don't know if he'll ever play as a quarterback. I see it's almost 4 o'clock as well. By the way, Mullet. So I will, if you do dip here, I will keep yapping. But eventually, I'll post this onto YouTube. It's going to take a while to export, but it will be on YouTube eventually. To the Dallas Cowboys next, though. Again, great value. I know they had to trade up. It was like a fourth or maybe 2/4, something like that. But they get Caleb Downs. If Jeremiah Love wasn't the best player in the class, it was probably Caleb Downs. Or I guess you could argue Mendoza for value, but gotcha. All right, well, I can get through at least maybe a few more teams here before you got to go. Yeah, Downs at pick 11, great value. I know there's going to be Giants fans that are bummed that He is a cowboy when they could have taken him. I like who the Giants got, but yeah, they could have had Caleb Downs. That's true. Malachi Lawrence, I was a little lower on him, but I'm not. I did end up mocking him in the first round in my final mock, so wasn't surprised he went in the first round. They followed that up in the third round with Jay Barham, who he's probably listed at linebacker. Yeah, not a middle linebacker, I don't think, but he could basically play that position. So yeah, I guess out of Michigan, didn't mind it. Pretty good value. Drew Shelton, I was hearing he's not exactly the type of scheme offensive lineman that would fit what they have, but as a backup offensive lineman, I don't dislike the pick. The Bengals Buckeyes fans around me are butthurt that they could have had Downs instead of Dexter, but I mean, it's hard to navigate a guy who looks great versus a guy who is already proven. Yeah, that's interesting discussion. Would you rather have maybe 5 years of Dexter Lawrence or maybe 10 years of Caleb Downs? That is kind of an interesting discussion. I don't know. I don't know how to go about answering that one. That's tough. If I knew for sure Dexter Lawrence was going to play for the next 2 to 3 years at minimum, as well as he's played in the past, then I'd probably say Dexter Lawrence. Caleb Downs, great player, great prospect. He's not the most complete, well-rounded safety that's ever come out for the draft. And as far as like a safety prospect, he is a really good prospect. But again, the positional value, it's not the same as an edge. Obviously, not a QB, a tackle, and maybe not even a defensive tackle. So there's an argument to be made. Certainly, Dexter Lawrence, obviously being older, that's I get why there's a discussion. No, I get it. Like if I was a Bengals fan and I wanted them to draft all the Bearcats because of the regional connection. Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe a little bit, but yeah, I get that. I get that thought. Devin Moore. Cowboys did not go corner early, but they do get Devin Moore in the fourth round. I thought that was decent value for him. Big corner, decent athlete. They've got Ravel buried in here. Darian Kendrick, not a amazing athlete, 85 speed. Kobe Durant was a nice free agent pickup. I thought they could have used one more corner, and I saw a lot of people mocking them to take a corner with one of their first two first round picks. Didn't love that idea, so that kind of worked out pretty well. They very, very heavily attacked defense. Next pick was LT Overton. Not exactly sure what he is on this team. And is he not even here? Oh, sorry here. So he's basically the same size as Rashawn Gary. I mean, maybe there's a world where he ends up being a decent pass rusher. He just didn't really show that at Alabama, which is why he ends up going in the fourth rounds. He went back to school last year because he wanted to show more, and he didn't really do that. So, and then kind of, I was talking about Reggie Virgil and the Cardinals earlier. Anthony Smith, it's another receiver who I'm kind of lower on. Now, as far as the value of the pick, it's a seventh rounder. You're throwing a dart at a receiver you liked. That's fine. I don't necessarily see how he's going to contribute that much this year. Um, Now maybe Pickens holds out, and there's a world where he gets on the field and he plays well. But that one was kind of a curious pick. They didn't exactly take just a straight up linebacker in this class, and I think that was something I would have liked them to do. Now, if Barham ends up just being a linebacker, I guess I get that, but they also didn't take a running back in the entire class, so that was kind of interesting. Or a tight end. I thought maybe Sadiq would have been on their radar, but no. Next up, Denver Broncos. This was maybe, in all honesty, the first really head scratching pick. And apparently he was a bit higher on the consensus. We'll hold off on that. Is Pickens even on the team? He signed the franchise tag. And I think the thought a lot of people had was, oh, he can be traded now because he signed the franchise tag. He may just play on the tag. I don't know. But yeah, he's there for now. If AJ Brown is a Patriot, then George Pickens is a blank. Do a fun exercise there. Where's the most likely team Pickens gets traded to if he gets traded? Um, Good question. They're not going to trade him to the Eagles, obviously. The Eagles, I'm sure, would like him after they trade AJ Brown, but uh, Jets, Tennessee, send him to Tennessee. I say Jets. Did they draft a receiver? Oh yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Okay, maybe not the Jets. I'm looking. I'm looking, trying to think of a good fit. Probably, preferably an AFC team. I mean, heck, the Dolphins, but like, they're not. Are they really in a position to be giving up a high pick to get George Pickens? And he doesn't have much of a say, but he's not going to be happy going to the Dolphins. I don't think. Long shot shout out to the Buccaneers after losing Mike Evans. Back to the Steelers. With DK and getting Michael Pittman, probably not. Long shot Chargers. Another long shot Bears. Pickens and Baker sure is a thought. Chuck a deep Pickens down there somewhere. Chiefs. Boy. Don't say it. Don't do it. Don't say that. All right. Well, let's keep moving on here. Denver Broncos, as I was starting to say, for me, maybe I'm just not familiar enough with this game. He's fairly low on the guy, but Tyler Onedum. Um, I mean, maybe he's John Franklin Myers if he gets on the field and plays that role. I thought it was not the best use of their first pick of the draft in the early third round. Um, Now they got Jalen Waddle with their first round pick, so I need them to. Tyler, you need him. Um, I guess they needed him. They needed him pretty bad to take him with their first pick. So, Jonah Coleman in the fourth, I was okay with. They needed another back. J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, is just pretty much every year of his career has been hurt. Harvey was a fine pick, but didn't have a great season last year. So adding Coleman, Jalen McLaughlin's kind of a speed guy. Yeah, I like the addition of Jonah Coleman there. Cage Casey in the fourth, I thought was a really nice pick. Could possibly stick at tackle, maybe moves inside. Ben Powers has a year left on his deal, and both tackles are getting up there in age. So probably a future starter in the fourth round. Justin Jolly at tight end. Similar to Evan Ingram, I would say. So I don't know if he plays a ton as a rookie. Kept Trotman It's a decent group. Miles Scott at safety uh, does not appear to be listed. Oh, he's a corner. Yeah, I mean maybe he's got some flexibility to play corner. Secondary depth is fine. They doubled up at tight end with Bentley out of Utah, Dallin Bentley, another pretty similar size guy, similar athlete. And then one pick later with the Mr. Irrelevant pick. I mean, quite honestly, maybe my second favorite pick of theirs in this class, behind Cage Casey. Red Murdoch. I had him, uh, I mean, not too much higher than a late day 3 pick, but I thought he would have been gone well before the Mr. Irrelevant pick. Um, I like him. I see the roster has him at a 57. Decent developmental linebacker prospects. At worst, he's a special teams guy. I thought this was a Mr. Irrelevant pick that actually will kind of be relevant to their team this year because I think he'll make the team and play. So not a terrible draft, and of course you factor in that they got uh, Jalen Waddle. It's not a bad draft, not bad. Let's shoot through one more here before Mullet heads out. The Detroit Lions did go tackle, but not Monroe Freeling. They go with Blake Miller, which probably sends Penei Sewell over to left tackle. Blake can start probably right away at right tackle. I like it. I like Blake Miller's prospects, and I think it's a good. You talk about the culture of the Lions. I think it's a good culture fit. About to sign off, Skillet. Thanks for the depth, the draft yapping. Cross your fingers for the Mimi update. Certainly, for sure. Uh, Glad I could be maybe a little bit of a distraction for a little bit. And yes, definitely hoping everything goes well for both. And hope it gets easier for them and easier for you as well. Because I know how hard that kind of stuff can be. As I'm down to just one cat. Used to have 8. So I feel you. And hopefully everything goes well. But thanks for hanging out and watching. It's already been 2 hours. I am going to keep going, and if you want to watch the rest on YouTube, it'll be there eventually. So thanks for watching as always. We'll truck on though through these rest of these teams here. Second pick, they did trade up for Derek Moore. I believe they needed another edge. They got another Michigan edge, which isn't surprising at all. And this is about the value I had on him. Maybe a little early, but honestly, the edge players were kind of flying off the board. Trade up and get the guy you wanted. I don't mind that. Didn't have a third round pick, but they follow up with Jimmy Rolder out of Michigan, who is also listed as a middle linebacker or a Mike linebacker. But um, yeah, I mean, linebacker depth, edge, not exactly edge, but front 7 depth, I think, is something that they needed pretty badly. And they got a guy that could possibly start on the edge and a rotational linebacker with these next 2 picks. I like that. Keith Abney in the 5th. Amazing, amazing value. I mean, likely starting nickel right away. I do like Rakestraw. I feel like Rakestraw hasn't really gotten much of a shot yet. I mean, you got Rockus in here in the big 2026. Like, that's kind of crazy. But yeah, Keith Abney at, was he 157? Yeah, exactly. 157. Incredible value. Kendrick Law in the 5th was okay. He was pretty low on my receiver list, but decent athlete. Maybe he's your wide receiver 4 or 5 going forward. We'll see. Then they've ended up with two kind of rotational D linemen. First of all, Skylar Gill Howard, who I did like pretty well, and then Tyree West, I was not aware of out of Tennessee. So rotational guys, maybe they develop. You've got McNeil, Tyleek Williams, and Onzarike there. That certainly gives you more depth. So not bad picks. I like this draft for the most part, especially the Keith Abney pick. I mean, that was awesome. Awesome value. Green Bay Packers. Yeah, I mean, this is a decent little class. 6 picks. Started off with Brandon Cisse in the second, and he's again one of the youngest players in the class. Probably means he doesn't play a ton as a rookie. He might need to out of necessity. I mean, it's not the greatest group of corners, which is why you see them go corner with their first pick. But yeah, I like the upside and the potential of Brandon Cisse here. Next up was Chris McClellan, which I liked. I had him in a similar cluster as guys who went much later, so I'm a little surprised that the NFL saw McClellan as a day 2 pick and other guys like late to even undrafted day 3. But I think McClellan honestly kind of worth the value, kind of worth the selection here, middle third round, especially to a team who just kind of has guys in this room, doesn't really have established. Obviously, Javon Hargrave's established, but he's on the older side, and Devontae Wyatt kind of maxed out what he is as a player. So, kind of looking for somebody else that can give you rotational snaps at that position. Not a bad pick in the third round. Danny Dennis Sutton. I've heard deny as well. I'm not entirely sure. I assume it's Danny, but Dennis Sutton out of Penn State. Not quite some of their other edge players that they've had in the last couple of years. Obviously, he's not a Micah Parsons or Abdul Carter level prospect here. But the size profile and the athleticism, I liked him in college. He was kind of he was a guy who I thought preseason could kind of turn into a late day 1 or day 2, early day 2 prospect. Didn't quite happen. To get him in the middle of the 4th round, I think is pretty good value for a team that needed something on the edge. Obviously, you got Micah Parsons. Lucas Van Ness has become a decent player. Your depth is like Barron, Sorrell, Colin Oliver's all right. Brinson's also here on the interior, but yeah, you needed something else here, and they addressed their D line with 2 of their first 3 picks. I think that was a good idea, and also heavily attacking defense for this team. I thought was smart. Their first offensive pick comes in the 5th round with Jaeger Burton, a potential starting center option for them, as we've got Sean Ryan here penciled in at center with Jordan Morgan moving to left tackle, Banks filling in at guard, Anthony Belton listed at right guard. I mean, it's kind of a hodgepodge of trying to find the best, just trying to find the best group of 5 offensive linemen that you can, and getting them into their correct positions. I think there's probably a world where Jaeger Burton just starts. I mean, maybe not week 1, but other than Zach Tom, kind of unproven, all these guys. So we'll see if he ends up getting a starting spot. They double dipped at corner, taking Damani Jackson in the 6th round. Thought that was really good value. He was, I mean, honestly, in terms of like corner rank, I think he was in the 20s for me. ESPN here has him 19th positional rank. But to get him, mid to late 6th round, I thought was good value. That was pick 201. And of course, some of the players he went after, even at the same position, I was like, yeah, I'm a little surprised he's still on the board. So I thought that was good value. And then Trey Smack, another specialist, Get smacked. I hope somebody says that this year when he makes a field goal. A game winning field goal call, the Green Bay Packers, especially like a divisional game. Trey smack from 55 yards. Get smacked. Like that would be awesome. I want to hear that kind of a call this year. Somebody do it, please. And that's the Packers draft. So nice little draft, 6 picks. You got some future starters in there. I like it. Nothing to complain about. The Houston Texans. This might be kind of another questionable. I'm not going to say it's bad. Just maybe a little questionable. So they start off with Keelan Rutledge. I had him as a early day 2, mid day 2, or sorry, mid round 2 type of guy. If he comes in and starts at center for them right away and he's good, then great. I don't know if that's the most likely outcome. They're definitely trying to revamp the O line. A lot of veterans in here, a lot of youth behind them. So again, another team that just kind of threw everything at the wall and it's going to see what sticks, which 5 players is the best combination that they can get on the field. And if Keelan Rutledge is one of those 5 to begin the season at center or guard, that's good for them. Caden McDonald, I loved the pick. Seeing his reaction was awesome, and I just thought it was a great fit to begin with. So great pick for them. Which, as a Colts fan, unfortunate. As a fan of Caden Proctor, very happy for him. Now the rest of this draft, again, I've got some questions here, kind of, but we'll go again pick by pick. So Marlon Klein into the second round. It seemed like he started getting some hype, and it seemed like the consensus was just still not there for him to go this high. So I'm a little surprised he did, especially to this team who has. I felt like there were other tight end options that they would have taken over him at this pick, or even earlier if they wanted a tight end, and they didn't. So you got Dalton Schultz. Foster Moreau is a fine backup. They're still trying to make Brevin Jordan work. And they've got Cade Stover. And I was pretty high on Luke Lachey. So, yeah, Marlon Klein. I mean, heck, there's a world where in a year he's their number 1 tight end going into next season, into the 27 season. I don't know if that's the most likely outcome. So I'm a little skeptical of that. One pick that was fine, just based on what I know about him, and he's not actually listed in here. And I'm going to botch the name, but Fubeki Nwaiwu is not listed, but he should be in here. Was a 4th-round pick, developmental guard option. Yeah, it's fine. The rest of the draft also just kind of Wade Woodaz also isn't in here. Should be, but developmental linebacker option. Kamari Ramsey at safety. I didn't end up being as high on him. Ends up going top of the 5th, which granted is not very high, but and maybe there's a world he moves back into his more comfortable role and plays better again in the NFL than how he played primarily as a corner last year. So this team does value versatility in the secondary as well. So there's a world where he has a nice NFL career. But Lewis Bond was a receiver I didn't have super high, and it's kind of a team that already has their receiving room. Unless Tank Dell just can't get back to where he was, which would be a bummer. But 5'11", 190, they've already kind of got receivers that cover that type of role, I would say, specifically Jalen Dole. And then Aiden Fisher out of IU, I liked him. Not the best athlete of all time, and he's also not listed in here, but oh yeah, he is. So he's in here, but Woodaz is not for some reason. Is he on the edge? No. He's just not here. All right, well, yeah, top to bottom, not my favorite draft. I do love Cade McDonald. I thought that pick was really nice, but other than that, eh. Which is a nice segue into maybe the most questionable draft of all, the Jacksonville Jaguars, with their first selection going Nate Boerricher. Now, again, maybe there's a world where he ends up being a great tight end, and I don't want to say, he's always terrible. I can't believe they took him, and he ends up becoming Travis Kelsey. So, just as a prospect, I just, where I had him on in my tight end rankings, he was in the 20s, and they took him at pick 57. So, to me, not exceptional value for your first draft pick. And that kind of it did pick up. I will say in the third round, they did much better than the rest of their draft. Albert Regis in the third, Emmanuel Pregnon in the third was exceptional value. I kind of get why he fell. I had him as a fringe first round talent, but as a guard, a little bit of an older prospect, I think there's a world where he starts earlier than you might expect on this team, um, and has a nice NFL career. So getting him in the third round I thought was nice. And then Jalen Husky also in the third round, depth secondary piece. Okay, it's only 62 in the roster, but that's tough. And then we get back to more questionable picks. So Wesley Williams, with his athletic profile and his combine numbers, I had him ranked dead last for edge rushers. And for some reason he's not. Oh, here he is. Now, okay, 86 speed's kind of crazy. 86 speed would be kind of wacky. Um, Maybe there's a world where he bulks up and plays more of a 3-4 D end role, or even a 4-3 D tackle role, or just is versatile enough to be on the field. I I don't know if I see that happening with Wesley Williams. And as a fourth round pick, I thought there were other players that you could have thrown a dart at and had more likely of a success hit rate than Wesley Williams. But again, that's kind of the rest of their draft. So next up was Tanner Koziel, who I had higher ranked than Nate Borker, and he's not here for some reason. So that's unfortunate. So yeah, if you switch the two tight ends, I probably wouldn't have taken either of them in the second round, but they really wanted depth tight ends. So okay, Josh Cameron, a receiver, kind of maybe more of a running back depth pick in the sixth round. I thought that was fine. They then take another receiver, and CJ Williams I did not have on my board at all. I did not have him on my radar. I did not have him at all anywhere in my database. So don't know much about him. He was a transfer from Wisconsin to Stanford. Uh, Here we got the profile on him. He's not a vertical threat, balance and body control. He led Stanford in receiving yards with 750 last year. So that's about all I can say about CJ Williams. It's kind of curious that they take two receivers when they have Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas, and Parker Washington, and Travis Hunter. Now, there was a report that Travis Hunter was going to play more corner and kind of give up on being a full time receiver. So maybe that is part of why that would happen, and I will be RB. All right, a lot of things are happening. I'm back though. Yeah, so Travis Hunter, maybe he's more of a full time corner. They take two quote unquote receivers. They didn't take any corners. So, well, Husky if he's a corner and not a safety, but interesting thought there about Travis Hunter. And then Zach Durfee was their next pick in the seventh round. I don't think I had him on my board. And wrap it up with Parker Hughes, who I don't think he was on my board out of Middle Tennessee State. So kind of a questionable, maybe at least if you hit on Pregnon, it's not just throwing out the picks. And a lot of those guys will be maybe quality depth. All right, sorry about that. Kansas City Chiefs up next, traded up with their first selection to take Mansour Delane, who very well might be their number one corner already. Wouldn't be shocked at that. They obviously lost their top two corners. The Trent McDuffie trade still kind of baffles me. They end up uh, using that pick to take Peter Woods. Decent value. I kind of saw him more as an early second rounder guy, but taking that at 29, that's fine. But yeah, trading Trent McDuffie, don't know if I would have done that. Probably your best, I mean, certainly your best secondary player. I mean, it's up there with Chris Jones for your best defensive player overall. And you get Peter Woods. I don't know. I don't know if Delane pans out, then great. But next up was our Mason Thomas. He's now the Chiefs' Mason Thomas, not our Mason Thomas. Oh. Early second round. He's the type of edge player that they didn't really have. Speed rush, 240 pounds, get after the QB. Don't mind that. Jaden Canaday in the fourth out of Oregon. They really needed to attack secondary, and they did that decently. So set as a corner, probably more of a nickel. Emmett Johnson in the fifth, though, for me, their best value pick. And again, one of the best of the entire draft. He was my RB3, and he ends up going mid fifth round. So really like that pick. Cyrus Allen, receiver out of Cincinnati, the one that did get drafted. I really thought both would be, but Caldwell goes undrafted. Allen, though, to the Chiefs. Another kind of smaller speedster type, which they obviously like. They didn't really get a physical receiver in this class, so I'm kind of surprised at that. But you do have Rice still, at least for now. You do have Jalen Royals. It's not a bad group by any means. And they end their draft with Garrett Nussmeier, possibly the real best steal of the draft. I mean, he's unlikely to ever start consistently for this team with Patrick Mahomes here, of course. Signed through 2031. Three-time Super Bowl winner. Is it three? Um, but you know, if Mahomes can't start the season, Andy Reid was giving Justin Fields some praise recently, and Nussmeier maybe he's not even healthy enough to play this year, but as a 4-year backup, cheap backup, seventh round pick, I think you can do a lot worse than Garrett Nussmeier for Patrick Mahomes. Um, to get that in the late seventh round is a great value pick. He was my QB. I think he ended up being my QB4 behind Beck, and I'm sure there's people that think I'm done for that. But factoring in the injuries, factoring in the size as well, he's not the biggest QB. again, I kind of liked Beck more than other people. I don't know, but I certainly liked Nussmeier a lot more than a mid to late seventh round pick. I mean, I thought he'd be at worst an early day three pick, and ends up going very very late day three. So great value there for the Chiefs. Top to bottom, not a bad looking draft. It's just the fact that you traded away Trent McDuffie that makes it look not as good in my opinion. And forgive me again for just one moment as I check some things here. Okay. Moving on from the Chiefs, next up is the Los Angeles Chargers. So they start off their draft with Akeem Mesidor. Great fit, great pick, really good prospect. What are we doing here? We got Jamari Caldwell and Justin Igboigbe as edge players. Do we even have Mesidor? There we go. That's 69 overall. Come on, man. 72 speed. Come on, man. Why are we doing Mesidor so dirty, bro? He's first round pick. Um, and again, older prospect. I get why he goes 22, but I'd say at worst he was the fourth best edge prospect in this class and probably a top 15 talent in the entire class. So getting that at 22, good pick. People are making jokes like he was high school teammates with Khalil Mack, stuff like that. It's like, okay, man, he's not that old. He's going to be 25 this year. He's not going to be 35 like Khalil Mack. Come on, guys. Next up was Jake Slaughter, and Jake Slaughter, I had in mocks last year before he decided he was going to stay in school. I had him being a fringe first round prospect. Now, maybe he was a player I was a bit high on. He ends up going, late second round, which still seems like he was high for a lot of people. Or still seems like that draft selection was high for a lot of people, I should say. I like him. If he ends up being their starting center down the road, I wouldn't be shocked. Maybe he plays guard. He gives them depth versatility at least. Now, if you told me you're taking a backup interior lineman at 63, it doesn't sound great. But I think there's a world he ends up starting down the line, so I don't mind the pick. Their next selection was Brennan Thompson, who gives them. Again, I don't want to necessarily call him a gadget guy, but he's certainly a deep threat at 5'9", 160. Um, and then could there be any two different type of players? As you had Brennan Thompson, a small wide receiver. Their next pick was Travis Burke, a 6'8", 330 tackle. In fact, I think I have him listed at 6'9". Is that right? He was fourth round, right? Yeah, I have him listed at 6'9", 315. So anyway, he's a massive tackle. So they also got Isaiah World as an undrafted free agent. I don't know if I'd say he's 13 overall higher than Travis Burke, but okay. Next up was Genesis Smith. That was a pretty good value pick in the late fourth round. Good safety depth there, along with RJ Mickens from last year. Nick Barrett, for his fifth round, I think this was fine. Rotational D tackle option. And then they ended the draft with more offensive linemen. They took 4, which goes to show you what they thought their biggest need was, and I agree. Logan Taylor was next up as a guard, maybe a tackle option. And then Alex Harkey, I had him as a tackle. They have him as guard tackle option. Just needed offensive line, to be honest. I mean, you've got Trevor Penning and Cole Strange listed as your best guards right now. That can't be the case for the future. It just can't be. So hopefully they get some of these guys to develop, and hopefully you can keep your tackles healthy as well. Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. So not a bad draft for the Chargers. I really like Mesidor. I really don't mind any of their picks. So another pretty good draft for me. Now we come to another controversial, I guess, draft, and that being the Rams, starting off with Ty Simpson at 13. Personally, again, people are going to go crazy. Like, oh, he's super high on Carson Beck. Oh, he's super high on Ty Simpson. I was mocking him at 16 to the Jets. I thought he would be a mid first round pick. I thought if he didn't go to the Jets, somebody would trade up for him. I thought maybe the Cardinals would have been interested. I thought maybe the Jets would trade back into the first round to take him. And of course, they did trade back up, did not take him because he was gone. But yeah, I mean, 13 is awfully high for a guy that did not make a ton of starts in college, looked kind of shaky against the best competition that he faced. I love the situation for Ty Simpson. I don't love the situation for Matt Stafford. Um, Obviously, Sean McVay had some looks that were questioned where they brought him out on ESPN to say, "Oh yeah, we love Ty and we're so happy," and I'm sure he really meant all that. And it's a curious pick, right? Because it's effectively the Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love type picks where you're drafting a guy a year or more before you need him, and it the clock was already ticking here with Matt Stafford, despite winning MVP last year, and the clock just moved closer to doomsday, so to speak. So it's unfortunate for Stafford if he, maybe he wants to keep playing for 3 years and they end up forcing him out after two. Like, I don't know. But he's obviously getting older. He's getting closer to 40. When you have a 40-year-old quarterback, it makes sense to have somebody prepared to take his place. So I get it. I can't say that I love it based on the fact that they were probably the Super Bowl favorites mid to late season last year. They made it to the NFC Championship game. You figure, if you add in some contributors here in this draft, it makes you that much stronger. There were players on the board, even offensive line. I thought, I mean, at 13, you could have drafted Vega Ione and plugged him in as a starting guard right away. You could have moved Avila back inside, maybe something to that effect. I thought, I mean, how many edge and D line players do you really need, right? Like, they've got really good rotational guys for this group, but I don't know, man. I mean, obviously they spent their other first round pick on Trent McDuffie, which was a great move. So I don't know, man. If you really like the QB, and obviously they did because they took him to 13. If you really think that he's the future, I can't hate it. I don't love it. So in the end, for me, it's fine, and we'll see how he pans out in the future. Now their next pick being Max Clare was curious because they brought Tyler Higbee back. They have Colby Parkinson, who kind of broke out a little bit, and they just drafted Terrence Ferguson last year in the second round, and they still have Davis Allen hanging around, who was a fifth rounder. But it's kind of like you already had your four rotational tight ends, and they just added another one. And it's like if you're going to take a rotational tight end pass catcher, why not take a receiver where you're trying to trade Devontae Adams apparently, and you don't have the best depth. Like, I like Jordan Whittington, Mumfield even maybe he's okay, and we'll get to CJ Daniels, but I would have if they're going to take Ty Simpson at 13, I would have liked to see a receiver more than a tight end with this next pick. But I do like Max Clare, and there's a world where he ends up being their best tight end in a year. So again, I don't hate it, but I don't love it. Keegan Tross was up next. There were other offensive linemen that I had above him, but again, I thought they could have used another tackle option for the future, so it's okay. CJ Daniels probably my favorite pick to this point They went without a pick from the third to the sixth round, so Daniels was only their fourth pick, and he is a nice depth piece at receiver that maybe ends up being, a starter long term alongside Puka. Don't mind that. Their actual best pick for me though was Tim Keenan, and I alluded to this earlier where McClellan went to the Packers in the third round. I had Tim Keenan ranked right there with him, and there's a 4 round gap in those players, so I'm surprised at that. It's really good value for the Rams. Again, I don't know really how much they need another D line player. He does give them a type of tackle they don't really have because you look at all these guys: 288, 310, 297, 300, 299. A lot of undersized guys. Tim Keenan, more of a nose. So kind of fills out what they needed there. But I still see him as a rotational guy. And that's it. A 5-man class, I think, is the lowest of anybody in the NFL. So you hope they have good enough team. What am I trying to say? You hope they have the best team and they can actually go win a Super Bowl if you're a Rams fan this year, because you kind of didn't really set yourself up great for the future with this pick, unless Ty Simpson is just him. You know what I mean? If the chance that the day comes when they want to turn it over to Ty Simpson and he's bad, and you have to draft another quarterback in 3 years, then you wasted this pick. But again, I don't hate it because I understand the pick. I understand the value as well of Ty Simpson. I just think that they weren't really the right team to be taking him, in my opinion. Next up, the Raiders, kind of all over the place because they made a lot of picks I did like a lot, and they made some picks I didn't love. So, of course, we'll start with pick number one, Fernando Mendoza, the obvious pick, the locked in pick for like the past 4 months. Everyone knew this is what was going to happen. Nobody's surprised by this. Uh, as far as I know, nobody dislikes this. Um, for the Raiders, you hope he is a franchise QB. You hope he pans out. You hope they can be competitive throughout his career. You've given him, a decent fundamental starting spot with Genty. The receiving core isn't amazing, but you do have Brock Bowers, Colton Miller, bringing in Tyler Linderbaum. You still have Max Crosby, at least for now. We'll see if they end up still trying to trade him. They revamped their linebacking duo with Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean. Tron Johnson comes in. So I think they did a decent job in the offseason of trying to set this team up for success. For Fernando Mendoza to come in and be adequate and be able to develop well throughout his career. However, the next two picks I wasn't as high on. Traden Stukes in the second round, early second. I thought was a little early. And of course, I don't see him. Here he is. Probably a safety, maybe more of a nickel player. And again, you're taking that early second round. I mean, I wouldn't have been mad about Elijah Surratt here, and he ended up going mid fourth. So, um, yeah. And again, Stukes, there's a path where he becomes a quality secondary player for them. So it's not a pick I hate or anything like that, but I thought there was better value to be had. And then Kieran Crawford, um, they traded Tyree Wilson to the Saints during the draft, and then they replaced him with Crawford. It's okay. And again, like if they trade Max Crosby within the next year, like they need more on the edge. I get that, but is he going to contribute in the next 2 years all that much? I don't know if I see that as an early third round pick. I don't know if that would have been my go to move there. Now they also have Malcolm Kuntz. He's listed as a weak side linebacker. I don't know about that, but yeah. So questionable day two picks. They did, however, also get Trey Zune, who I really liked. Probably I don't think he's 6'7", is he? ESPN's got him at 6'6". I had him at 6'6". Anyway, probably an interior guy, and I'd be looking at guard here as a potential starting spot. Now, if you recall, if you watched my free agent prediction video, I kicked off the video talking a lot for some reason about Spencer Burford, and he is here with the Raiders now. There's a world where maybe he starts at guard for them. Um, TJ Glaze at right tackle too. I'm not sold. So maybe there's a world Trey Zoon moves over to right tackle, or even Charles Grant, or maybe even Spencer Burford. So they're going to have to figure out their best offensive line combination. Powers Johnson's obviously is a starter. Linderbaum's obviously the center. Colton Miller's obviously the left tackle. But with left guard and right tackle being kind of up for grabs, I would say Trey Zoon has a decent shot of getting one of those starting jobs. Top of the fourth round. Here's the actual steal of the draft with the caveat that he ever can be healthy enough to be what he was in college last year. Or even, I guess you'd say 2 years ago now, since last year is over. Jermod McCoy at the top of the fourth round. I mean, mocking him as high as 10th throughout the draft process. An easy top 10 talent in the entire class if healthy, but he's not. And that's the problem. So he says that he's fine. During the draft, we're hearing about how he may need another surgery. He's probably not going to play this year. I don't know what the full extent of his current injury is because they're talking about his knee, but not what he dealt with prior to missing all of this past season. I don't know exactly what that's going to mean for his future. There's people saying there's a risk of him ever playing again, which would just absolutely be awful if he's not able to. You obviously hope he can. And as far as evaluating this pick, just one of the more sad picks of the draft to see this guy go in the fourth round is just sad, as talented as he is. Um, like imagine if Mel Kiper talking about Shador Sanders, but Shador was actually like a great quarterback prospect. That's kind of what it's like seeing McCoy slide all the way down to the fourth round. I would argue this is even worse. So, bummer. I really hope he can rebound, and even if it takes a year of recovery, I hope in 27 he can get on the field and show why he's the steal of this draft for this team. Just because you hate to see guys hurt and be valued as a first round talent and end up going in the fourth round. It stinks. So we'll move on to the rest of their draft, though. Mike Washington, I don't know if I'd exactly call him a change of pace back for Genty, but definitely explosive and has some juice in the fourth round. I don't mind taking that. Dalton Johnson, the teammate of Traden Stukes. There's Stukes. There is Johnson. Both out of Arizona, of course. Not bad. Not bad value here in the fifth. They continue to attack secondary with Hezekiah Massis. They took 4 secondary players in this class. Wow. And I think they needed to. I think this was a good idea. So um, we'll see if the other 3 guys can pick up some slack this year and fill out some roles for them. They did not take a receiver until the 6th in Malik Benson, and I think receiver was a pretty uh, commonly mocked position for them as early as the second round. Like I said, I wouldn't have minded if they took Surratt as early as the second round. But they ended up going Malik Benson. And Malik Benson seemed to be a guy that was just kind of buried for a lot of people in their rankings. I was actually pretty high on him. I'm trying to because I had my rankings, but I cut each player out of my rankings to put them in the draft order. So I don't have my official rankings anymore. As I recall, I believe I had him in my top 20 wide receivers. ESPN had him 23rd, so maybe I wasn't too much higher on him than some, but to end up going mid sixth round, I thought was kind of a steal, and we'll see how much of an impact he can make in this offense. I think he's. I mean, you've got Tucker. They signed Jalen Naylor, Jack Besh or Beck, whichever it is. Dorsett, I don't expect much out of. Brendan Rice, practice squad guy last year or last 2 years. Dante Thornton is another guy that might still keep reps away from Benson, but I think there's a world where Malik Benson actually has decent numbers this year as a rookie. We'll see if he pans out. I mean, he's a 6th round pick, so you're not expecting a ton, but I don't mind the selection, of course. And they end up with their last pick in the 7th round, Brandon Cleveland. Unfortunately, did not get drafted by the Browns, just based on the last name alone. Neither did Big Citrus. I was kind of hoping one of those guys. If Cleveland had gone to the Browns and Citrus had gone to the Bengals, I would have been happy. But we'll get to Dominique Orange in a bit. But Brandon Cleveland, I don't know if I would say right now he's better than all their depth, but certainly a team that needed some defensive tackle options. I mean, Adam Butler at 31, 32 is their number one D tackle. I kind of like JJ Peggy's, but Broderick Martin's in here. Thomas Booker. Jonah Lalu was a Colts draft pick. Just not the best group overall. So I don't mind adding Brandon Cleveland here in the 7th. Not a bad draft. Obviously, you get Mendoza, and the fate of the GM and coach is on his shoulders, but we'll see how it pans out. Next up, Miami Dolphins had a very, very long draft. Just kind of kept having picks. And that happens when you trade a lot of good players. So, uh, first pick was Caden Proctor. Maybe a touch early, but honestly, not bad value. He's listed at right tackle. That's fine for now. We'll see if maybe he comes in at guard right away instead over Savanaia, who was not particularly good last year. And they still have Austin Jackson. So I think there's maybe a world where Proctor starts at left guard as opposed to right tackle. Or maybe Austin Jackson even moves inside. We'll see. Next up was Chris Johnson. I liked him a lot, and I started talking about him as a possible first rounder a few months ago. And I can't remember if I ultimately did put him in my final mock in the first round, but getting him at 27, it made sense. I mean, they really don't have much at corner. Daryl Baker, Juju Brents, some Colts cast-offs, Alex Austin, Marco Wilson, some Patriots cast-offs. Jason Marshall was a depth pick last year. Storm Duck is who I was looking for. He's down here. I can find it. I had a mock where I had him in the first round, I believe, of the 23 draft, like a way too early 2023 draft. I I had him as a first rounder, and obviously that was very, very early, and it didn't pan out with Storm Duck. But he was a day one starting corner for them last year against the Colts, and we blew him out. So they desperately needed a corner. Chris Johnson in the first round, I would say is fringe good value, like it's decent value because I had him as a fringe first rounder, and that's where they got him. So it's fine. The rest of this draft though was awesome. Jacob Rodriguez, mid second round, awesome pick. If I can find him, here he is. Awesome pick. It's who I wanted, and I like CJ Allen, but it's who I wanted for the Colts. Next up was Caleb Douglas at receiver. Uh, okay, maybe not one of the more awesome picks, but they did need to throw some darts at receiver. They get a physical, big body guy. Will Kazmarek, Kakmarek. I feel like there's a Z sound in there. More of a blocker, but okay, he certainly does not have 91 speed. Come on, man. uh, Yeah, he'll compete to be a rotational tight end right away, I would say. Next up was the receiver that they took that I really liked, Chris Bell. Was getting hype as a potential first round prospect, and then he got hurt, and then kind of fell down the board and got forgotten about, and ends up going into the third round. Really good pick there. Trey Moore was next, hybrid linebacker edge player from Texas. I liked him, and ends up going late fourth. Thought was good value. Next was Kyle Lewis, another linebacker, kind of undersized. Maybe he's more of a, not exactly a safety, but kind of a box safety type of role for you. I like that pick. Michael Taff, depth safety for a team that also really badly needed safeties. I liked that. Kevin Coleman, another really good receiver that I liked. If they had taken, again, you can't just really shuffle these picks around like this, but if they had taken Chris Bell with their first receiver pick, and then Kevin Coleman with their second, and then Caleb Douglas with their third, I would have had no complaints. So I only have a slight complaint about where they took Caleb Douglas, because I feel like they could have even gotten better value than Douglas. Like Malachi Fields went one pick before Caleb Douglas. And I feel like the gap there was kind of a lot. Like you could have taken Chris Brazzell at 75 over Caleb Douglas and still had Kekmerick, Bell, all the rest of your class, Trey Moore, Kyle Lewis, Michael Taff, Kevin Coleman. You could have still had all those guys and gotten a better prospect, in my opinion. But still, you get Chris Bell and Kevin Coleman both, and maybe Caleb Douglas turns into something. So you get three receivers. You also took Seydou Traore, who's more of a receiving tight end, better athlete than Kekmerick, and DJ Campbell on the offensive line, guard out of Texas, who maybe he starts earlier rather than later. Oh, he's right here. And then Max Llewellyn ends the draft off with an edge rusher. They also signed someone I had in the similar mold as Max Llewellyn, Mason Rager, who had 3 sacks in the Senior Bowl game. I really thought he was going to get drafted. I had a mid to late day 3 on him and was surprised he wasn't drafted. So if if I was going to recommend a team for a Madden rebuild, this is a lot of young players to develop. And Malik Willis, you could have fun with him in the meantime. I don't think he's necessarily the franchise quarterback going forward in real life. You got Achane. Offensive line is okay in developing. Defense, you got a lot of young pieces to develop. Still got to focus on secondary. This could be a fun team to rebuild in Madden. So as far as real life, we'll see how they do this year. I think they could still be looking for their future QB in next year's class. I don't think it's Quinn Ewers either. I like Quinn. I like him, but probably a good backup at best. Next up, man, it's taking a while. Minnesota Vikings. I want to give enough analysis per player. So uh, first pick was Caleb Banks. I had them taking him, and then he just kind of kept falling down my board until I had them taking him in the second round. They ended up getting him in the first. You know, if you've heard anything about Chris Banks, you've probably heard the like Chris Jones potential, or like compared to him as a prospect. I don't know if I see him becoming Chris Jones, but if you take him at 18, you're kind of hoping he becomes Chris Jones. So um, I hope he does for him and the Vikings. I hope he does. They followed that up with Jake Golday, another Cincinnati Bearcat receiver, joining Eric Wilson and Ivan Pace. Interesting. Um, Played kind of a hybrid role for Cincinnati this past year, so I don't know if he's necessarily going to be ready to take over a starting linebacker spot, which is fine. They still have Blake Cashman, Pace, and Eric Wilson. You don't need him to come in and immediately give you starting snaps, just rotational to work his way in. Then they hit D line again with Dominique Orange. Orange is the new purple. Um, yeah, I mean they needed it. You look at who else they have on the D line. It's not a ton. Jalen Redmond's who I was looking for. I do like him, but yeah, I don't mind them doubling up in the first 2 rounds. Also in the third round, they got Caleb Tiernan, possibly a guard at the next level. I don't think he's 6'8". I think I have him at 6'7", but could also be 6'6" and some change. Not positive. Also in the third round, they got Jacoby Thomas out of Miami, secondary player, which again they needed the safety, and I had them taking Dylan Thieneman a lot throughout the process. So I like the pick of Thomas. Max Bredesen, probably more of a halfback fullback type. There he is, as opposed to being a tight end. And they still have Hawkinson and Oliver, so doesn't need to be a tight end right now. Charles Dimmings in the fifth. I like that value. I thought they could have added a corner, and they did. So good shot on a corner there. Damone Claiborne in the sixth. I did think they might draft a running back before that, but adding a really good athlete in Claiborne behind Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, nice idea there. And then ending the draft with a player I didn't know much about, but another Cincinnati Bearcat in Gavin Gerhardt. So, depth interior O line. Don't mind that pick, even though I did not really know much about him. So yeah, a fine draft. It kind of depends on Caleb Banks, but Gold A Orange. I like those first initial picks especially. Patriots were interesting. Um, Caleb Lomu, I didn't mind. I think I had him mocked there a few times throughout the process. I don't know if he starts right away. They've got him listed as a backup right tackle. That's probably exactly what happens. Um, I mean, maybe AVT isn't ready, and they have to shuffle some things around with Onwenu, and maybe Lomu starts as a guard week one. That could possibly be something, but I doubt it. Gabe Yakus in the second round was a nice pick. They needed edge, I think, pretty desperately, to be honest. You've got Harold Landry, and outside of that, anybody else you feel real comfortable rushing the passer right now? I mean, Jesse Luketa, is that a legitimate option? So they really needed an edge player. Eli Reardon in the third, thought that was good value. And then the first player that was taken that I did not know anything about, Kayron Prunty out of Wake Forest. And from what I've heard about him since, is that maybe I should have known about him. Maybe I should have heard about him sooner. Although he's not listed on the team in this roster, unfortunately. So, um, transferred multiple times, ended up at Wake Forest. He had 8 pass deflections this past year. Good tackler at corner, decent size at 6'2". So maybe they got something there they can work with. Maybe he's a special teamer. I'm not really sure, but we'll see. Crownover, I was pretty low on, but honestly, as a sixth round depth tackle, that's not bad value. Um, Namdi Obiazor, decent linebacker prospect. Thought they needed one of those as well. They got that. Baron Morton, I didn't have him as being a draftable QB, so I'm kind of surprised, especially with Nussmeier available, that they took him. Um, Jam Miller, I've heard kind of some negative things on him and his profile as a player, but he was a top 15 back for me in this class. It wasn't a particularly exceptional class of running backs, but I think he's got some ability. And then ended the draft with an undersized edge player in Quintavious Hutchins, who there he is. So maybe a speed rusher that can get after the QB. a little bit. I don't know if I'd count on them having a great pass rush this year, but should still be pretty good against the run at least. So that's the Patriots draft. Not bad. Not probably one of my favorite drafts, but not bad. The Saints, I think, are one of my favorite drafts. They start off with Jordan Tyson, who certainly was in competition for wide receiver one. He did end up being just behind Tate for me, but I think can be a very good number two with Chris Olave there. Christian Miller in the second round, really good value. I had him as a fringe first rounder. Thought they needed another young D tackle. I don't see Brian Brzee, and that's because he's listed as an edge. I don't know why. I guess if you take over this roster and you put it in franchise, you want Christian Miller to play, and maybe he wouldn't if Brzee was there as well as Godchow. I don't know. Brian Brezee's not an edge, but anyway. Oscar Delp in the third round was a good pick. They needed a young tight end to develop. Juwan Johnson, Noah Fant aren't exactly the future of the position. Taysom Hill's gone as well. So Jeremiah Wright, I liked him. Can develop him behind Cesar Ruiz. I like that idea. Bryce Lance, another receiver option. For the late fourth round, I thought this was good value. They do have Vele, who's a bigger body guy that they traded for last year and then got hurt. Um, maybe that's a competition of who gets reps for that type of receiver. Lorenzo Styles, late fifth. I like that pick. Really good athlete. Maybe you blitz him as a third safety option. You got Julian Blackman, Jonas Sanker, Justin Reed, Jordan Howden. So he might at best be your fifth safety, but I think he makes the team and plays a bit of a role for you. So it's not a bad pick in the fifth. Barian Brown in the sixth. LSU had a lot of receivers in this class. Barian Brown's going to be buried on the depth chart at the moment, but I like him as a burner. Maybe just a gadget type of guy, but deep threat. And then TJ Hall, another secondary option, young corner to develop. I think that's not a bad pick. I kind of was hesitant to give them a corner early because you do have two young corners already in McKinstry and Quincy Riley. Despite having Beanie Bishop and Isaac Yiadom, I think this could be a team that looks at the veteran corner market, signs somebody before the season. But yeah, it's not a bad group, and honestly, not a bad draft for the Saints. I kind of like their draft a lot. Next up's the Giants. Arvell Reese is interesting, man. He's an interesting personality. He's an interesting player. I hope it works for him, and he's a good player for the Giants. I don't think I did a single mock ever where I had him going to the Giants, but certainly when he was there at 5, I get why they took him. Why am I not looking at him? There he is. 83 in the roster. Kind of crazy, but yeah, really good athlete. If he doesn't end up panning out as a pass rusher, you at least have a linebacker option. Now, taking that at 5 is kind of crazy when you could have had Sonny Styles for that, but obviously the upside here with Reese is that he can be a really good pass rusher. You have Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau for now, as well as Abdul Carter, so you're not going to ask him to rush the passer as much, I feel, early on, but obviously as a rotational guy, can try to get him involved. The other first round pick, Francis Mauigoa, I think he plugs in at guard right away. Maybe even you move Luminor inside to guard. I haven't really heard anyone say that. Maybe it's unlikely that would happen, but gosh, you've got Falele and Evan Neal. Could have the biggest guard combo in probably 50 years. Interesting. Other than that, Colton Hood in the second round, decent value. Of course, a lot of corners that went first, second, third round I had lower than Jamad McCoy, but you got to factor in the injury, I suppose, as to why it makes sense to take a player like Hood over McCoy. Malachi Fields, they traded up for in the third round. I didn't mind it. I was kind of lower on Fields because he's just not an amazing athlete, but it does give them a type of receiver that they really just don't have here. Big physical, big body guy. So to go with Neighbors long term, they've got a lot of options, but I like that one, and I'll BRB. Okay, back. I'm reminded every time I stream why I don't stream. It's fun. Anyway, where did I leave off? Malachi Fields. Next up was Bobby Jamison Travis, rotational D tackle option. Nose to replace Dexter Lawrence. Not exactly a Dexter Lawrence replacement. He's also not 227 pounds. He's 327 pounds. But yeah, I mean, in the sixth round, sure, why not? Also in the sixth round, J.C. Davis. I actually like this one quite a bit. Andrew Thomas, really, really good tackle. Unfortunately, he's missed a lot of games. J.C. Davis, maybe a guy that could step in at left tackle if he misses games. Or maybe Maui Noah is able to move out to left tackle, which leaves a spot at guard, which maybe could be J.C. Davis. And then with their last pick, also in the sixth round, linebacker Jack Kelly. Depth. He's not even here. Now, you've got DeMarvin Leal listed as a will linebacker. I don't know about that. But, yeah, no. Oh, Jack Kelly's right here. Okay, bro, a 73. Come on now. Come on now, man. But yeah, depth, linebacker, sure. To the Jets, obviously, first pick at number 2. They have listed a linebacker? Yeah, David Bailey. That's Sam linebacker. Not a Sam linebacker. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people were lower on him. I get why he went 2. My initial post combine mock, I had him going number 2, and then I kind of dropped him to like later in the top 10. A lot of future mocks, I had like the Saints or the Bengals. I think I had him at when they were at 10, taking him a few times. I don't hated it too. Like there's no guarantee Arvell Reese is ever going to be a better pass rusher in the NFL than David Bailey. I love Arvell Reese as a prospect, but again, and part of the reason it came out, and I get why people don't like to hear this, but part of the reason it came out was the Jets were higher on Bailey and lower on Reese because they think Bailey can be a better impact right now, even if he isn't long term a better player. I get that because you do have a coach and a GM that are trying to keep their jobs, that are kind of on a shorter leash already than others because they were just hired last year and they were bad last year. So I get that. And it's not like I think David Bailey's going to be bad. I think David Bailey's going to be good. It's just that the perceived potential upside of Arvell Reese is, like I said, perceived to be higher than David Bailey, which may not happen. So I really don't mind it. In my final mock, I did have Reese at 2, but I don't mind taking Bailey at 2. They come back in the first round with Kenyon Sadiq, which is a nice combo with Mason Taylor. Good value, I think, at 16 for Sadiq. I thought he was a mid first round type of talent. And then they trade back up into the first round to get Omar Cooper. I think these 3 picks were great value. It's just if Arvell Reese hits as a pass rusher, we're going to look back and say, man, they could have had Arvell Reese. That's really the only issue. Second round, D'Angelo Pons, who, again, I really like him as a prospect, but I had him going lower because the height is a problem with his game, unfortunately. I I don't know if he's going to be able to stick on the outside, which makes him a nickel. And you saw the Lions get Keith Abney in the 5th round. I ended up having Abney just slightly higher than Pons. So I hope he's great. I hope he's an awesome player for the Jets. We'll see. Maybe he can even do a little blitzing. He's a good athlete. I don't know. I don't know if I would have taken him second round. Did not have a third round pick. They got Daryl Jackson though in the fourth. He ended up being my fifth D tackle, I believe. Um, where is he? I've noticed with this roster, they've set a lot of the 3-4 teams to have D tackles on the edge. It's not exactly what a correct scheme would be, but and Daryl Jackson's also not here, unfortunately. So, but yeah, Daryl Jackson, early fourth round pick. Thought that was really good value for him. Cade Klubnik trading up for him in the early fourth round, I did not think was great value. I do think he's probably a better player than Brady Cook, who they ended up having to play late last year. So if Geno Smith is bad and he gets benched and they have to end up playing one of these three guys right here between Bailey Zappi, Brady Cook, and Cade Klubnik, I guess at least you've got Cade Klubnik. But probably not the future starter. So to trade up fourth round, not great value. The rest of their draft in the sixth round, they got Inez Cooper out of Miami, big guard, developing behind Dylan Parham. I guess that's fine. And VJ Payne in the seventh round, I thought was really good value. He kind of fell in my safety rankings throughout the process. He's a very good athlete, and he doesn't necessarily have a ton of competition here. Malachi Moore started for them as a rookie. Of course, you've got Minka to play one spot. Andre Sicko, Belton, kind of a special teams, maybe third safety option. So he might have a bit of a hard time, and he's also. I guess the Jets didn't retire 24, did they, for Revis? Have players been wearing 24 for the Jets? That seems weird, but anyway. That's the Jets draft. I liked it for the most part. I did. A couple later picks kind of questionable, but you get three first round picks that were all first round talents, in my opinion. That's not a bad draft. Philadelphia Eagles, soon to be AJ Brownless, it seems. Their first pick ends up being Makai Lemon as well, who was very, very nearly a Steeler. Didn't pan out. Good value at 20. He did kind of slip a little bit, and that's kind of what I was thinking. I had him going to the Panthers in some mocks at 19. He ends up going to 20. So I'm not shocked he goes 20. I do think it's a really good pick for the Eagles. Next up was Eli Stowers, probable eventual starting tight end for this team. Dallas Goedert into his 30s. You get Stowers. It's a nice pickup. Markel Bell in the third was early, in my opinion. Um, Obviously, a huge developmental tackle, and obviously they've done that before, so it's not shocking. But yeah, we'll see if he ever ends up a starter for them. I'd be interested to see how he plays. Didn't have a fourth, but Cole Payton in the fifth makes me wonder if Tanner McKee will end up getting traded to a team that doesn't have a solidified franchise quarterback right now. Because they picked up Andy Dalton. Actually, they traded for Andy Dalton, didn't they? So McKee, I'd rather at this point probably have Tanner McKee as my backup. But then they draft Cole Payton, who, maybe he's the eventual Tanner McKee, where it's like, well, we got this decent backup here. Anybody want to trade for him? So, yeah, Tanner McKee might be on the block, is what I'm saying. But Cole Payton in the fifth, I thought was pretty good value, actually. Micah Morris in the sixth, that guard. I thought this was a really nice pick. Here he is. Tyler Steen is okay. He's an okay starting guard. Landon Dickerson, there was some rumors or some rumblings about him possibly retiring this offseason, which would be a tremendous bummer if he was to retire early because of injuries, but he seems like he's coming back. So, but having Micah Morris as a depth guard on this team, big mauling run blocking guard for a team that loves to run the tush push. I get it. I get that. They had three seventh round picks. First of all, Cole Wisniewski. I liked him. Kind of a hybrid size where he could play linebacker at 6'4", 220. Decent athlete, not great, so he's probably a box safety, not a box, not a literal box. But they got Michael Carter listed at safety now. That I don't know if that's official, but that is kind of interesting because he did sign, of course, Tariq Woolen behind Mitchell and DeJean. You've got some depth in Bennett, Ringo, Jonathan Jones, Ambry Thomas, Mac McWilliams. So pretty deep at corner already. So I don't mind the process of moving Michael Carter to safety. I just don't know if that's official or not. And you got Makuba and Wisniewski. So decent secondary there. And then the the steal of the draft. He's the next Aaron Donald. It's Uwer Bernard. He's intriguing, right? Like the workout was so crazy that he actually got drafted after never playing football in his life. And I would argue his speed should even be higher than 85, but we'll see where it comes in. Now to rate him higher than a Jomo is pretty wild, even Ty Robinson. But I think there's actually some upside there. I mean, the freakiness of his athleticism at that size is just not something you see. So, and if he gets on the field with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, I can see him playing this kind of role of Moro Jomo or Milton Williams in the future. Thought I had to sneeze there. My bad. They end the draft off with Keyshawn James Newby, and I don't think he was on my board at all. Kind of an undersized edge. See if he makes the roster. They did need edge, and they didn't address edge until late seventh round, which I was kind of surprised about. Joe Tryon Shoyinka might have to pull some weight this year, which I don't know if you really count on that, but all right. So decent draft for the Eagles. I really liked Lemon and Stowers to start off. Micah Morris, pretty good depth pick. Steelers next up. They almost had Mackay and Lemon. It's interesting to get those two teams back to back. But they end up going with Big Max. Max Ihanakor or Ihanachor. I'm not entirely sure the correct pronunciation on that one either. I thought it was Iconor for a while. One of those. He's probably going to stick at right tackle. Fatnow, there's a world maybe he plays guard again, but I think he ends up at left tackle over Broderick Jones. And then you've got, of course, Frazier, McCormick, and maybe Dunker starts at guard right away. Maybe even Braxton Jones gets a shot at guard. I'm not really sure what they're going to do, but and maybe Max doesn't even start right away at right tackle. So nothing's guaranteed. So, but I really liked the pick at 21. Thought it was good value. He rose up the board a tremendous amount in the last like 2 months, but for good reason. I'm not really surprised to see him go here at 21. Because they did not get Mackay Lemon, with their second pick, they go Jeremy Bernard. And if he's your wide receiver 3, that's a nice projection for him at the NFL level. But I think he can be a very good wide receiver 2 down the road. So right now you've got DK, trade for Michael Pittman, Jeremy Bernard as your 3, Roman Wilson still hanging around. Yeah, I like that idea of their receiving core. Drew Aller in the third. I'm not stoked about. Not stoked. I like Dollar. I thought last year he could have been a day 2 prospect. I know there were some people that were saying he could have been actually the number 1 pick. I don't think that would have happened. I think last year we would have been talking about Drew Aller like he was Carson Beck this year. And I think Aller gets a little more grace because he did get hurt, because some of the flashes were higher than Beck. So I do think there's a world where he becomes a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's very young still. He's got room to develop. He's got good size, nice arm. Um, Inconsistent, certainly. I didn't really think they'd draft a QB though. We're still waiting on Rodgers, but I thought they would be fine having Will Howard as their developmental QB3. So I am surprised. I'm a little surprised they took a QB at all, and that it was all her. I'm more surprised maybe. Um, but there's a world where Aaron Rodgers doesn't even come back, and they've got to figure out, is Mason Rudolph the best option for this year, or is it putting one of these young guys out there right away? So we'll see. That's a lot of draft prospects. You just say we'll see. It's up in the air. Who knows? With this particular pick, it really is a big we'll see. Moving on, also in the third, they got Dalen Everett. I was pretty high on him, and I think this was good value for Everett. Team that I think needed another boundary corner. They've got decent nickel options already, and Jalen Ramsey playing more of a safety hybrid nickel type of role. So don't mind the Everett pick. Um, I mentioned Dunker already, but we'll circle back to him. In the late third round, took Dunker, more of a guard, obviously listed as a guard here, but played tackle, so that's why I mentioned that. Caden Wetchen, great pick. Yeah, in the fourth round, return guy, return option, slot option. Probably your wide receiver 5 at best to start off with, but if he gets past Roman Wilson for snaps, I wouldn't be shocked. You replace Connor Hayward with Riley Nowakowski. Thought that was a fine pick. Scored. Was it the championship game that he scored in? Now I'm blanking. I think he scored in the national championship. Next up was defensive tackle Gabriel Rubio. Another player I did not have on my board at all. Actually, he's listed it. Is that right? Where was he picked? Sixth round. Sixth round. I have him listed at 6'5", 322. So I don't know where the 258 came from, but he's a defensive tackle, so I'm guessing I'm right on that one. Depth, nose tackle, basically. He'll compete with some of these guys like Yaya Black for that role, I suppose. Going to be tough to make the team, I would say, but competition. And then also in the secondary, Robert Spears Jennings. Nice pick here, backup safety. Developing. I like that idea. And then with their final pick in the seventh round, Eli Heidenreich. Listed as a running back, then they did draft 2 receivers, so I kind of thought he was more of a receiver myself, but as a receiving back, I don't mind that idea either. Pretty good draft for the Steelers. Kind of some question marks, but I don't mind the draft as a whole. Next up is the Seahawks, where they went Jatarian Price at 32. Kind of the expected pick if they didn't trade down. Ends up being exactly what happens, so don't mind that. Then they attacked secondary after losing some key players from their Super Bowl run. Bud Clark, second round. I like that one. And Julian Neal in the third. I like that too. Kind of restock the room, and some of these guys will maybe shift roles a little bit. But man, Nicky Manwari was such a steal last year, dude. Again, safeties just don't go high. The NFL is just not going to draft safeties very high. If you have a great safety prospect, just assume he's going to be a mid first round pick. If you have a good prospect, just assume he's going to be a day 2 pick. I don't know what else to say about safeties. Next up in the fifth round was Bo Stevens, and Bo Stevens might end up being a starter for them like immediately at right guard, or maybe even Zabel moves inside to center. We'll see what they do with their center spot. I know Seahawks fans are really, really not high on Anthony Bradford, but yeah, we'll see. They also have Christian Haynes, who was a third rounder, so they got some options. Um, Next up was Emmanuel Henderson Jr., a receiver. Somebody in, I think it was TFG's chat, came in and said, I don't know why we're drafting a receiver. And it's like, well, yeah, you have JSN, you have Rashid, and I like Torrey Horton as a young guy, but Cooper Kupp is into his 30s. I mean, can we count on Jake Bobo being there forever? Like Ricky White, you know, it's a sixth round dart throw at a decent athlete receiver, and if Rashid Shaheed's going to play more wide out consistently, then maybe you take him off doing as much special teams. Thought I had to sneeze again. It's going to happen eventually. Sorry if I don't mute. Next up, they had three seventh round picks. So Andre Fuller was the first. Again, attacking secondary. Next after that was Devin Eastern at D tackle. Somewhere in here, maybe, maybe not. Nope, no Eastern. Well, he's in there. I promise they took him, just not on the roster. And then Michael Dansby again in secondary. So four secondary picks. There he is again. Don't mind it. They need to restock. Some of these guys are going to be specialists, but some of these guys will play a role before long. So did not mind their draft top to bottom. It just seems kind of solid. I think Jadarian Price has a chance to be, a very, very good running back. I think, he wasn't just a first round pick because, oh, well, we want the fifth year option. He was deserving of being a first round pick, his first round talent. So I get that. Next up is the San Francisco 49ers. And again, this is going to be a draft that's kind of questionable to a lot of people. I liked Deshaun Stribling, but they traded down multiple times to take the receiver that they wanted over other receivers that I had rated higher, like Denzel Boston. It's an interesting group here. They bring in Mike Evans. They still have Brandon Ayuk, who's not going to play for them. Ricky Parasol was a first rounder. Christian Kirk comes over after a decent season with Jaguars. They still have Demarcus Robinson. Jacob Cohen was a kind of gadget type slot guy from a few years ago, fourth rounder. Jordan Watkins was a fourth rounder just last year. So it's kind of a crowded group without having like a set in stone number one for the future. Like right now, you could say it's Mike Evans, but we'll see if he can stay healthy. So there's a world Deshaun, again, I keep saying stuff like this, but there's a world Deshaun Stribling just ends up being really good and being their number one wide receiver. So I'm not going to question it too hard. But as I said, there were receivers that I had on my board that I liked more than Stribling. And they traded down, and in my opinion, didn't make the most of all their other picks they got. So to start the third round, they took Romello Height, or early in the third round, I should say. Older prospect again, and a very defined role being a speed rusher, kind of undersized. He's not going to be a great run defender. That's fine. That's decent value for Romello Height. After that was Kalen Black in the third round, and I liked Kalen Black. If they'd gotten him in like the sixth round, I would have said, yeah, great value. They already have, of course, CMC, Garindo, Jordan James from last year's class. I just, and Kalen Black, older prospect, just not the best use of a third round pick to get a depth running back, in my opinion. I did like Grayson Halton in the fourth round, defensive tackle. Provides good depth for them. Yeah, they traded for Osa Digizua, Alfred Collins, and CJ West, both from last year's class. Grayson Halton, maybe the best speed rusher from the inside between all these guys. Um, so yeah, not good value for the fourth there. Carver Willis. I know TFG was extremely high on Carver Willis, talking about back into the second round for him, but they get him in the fourth. The stock exchange guys were kind of low on him and didn't love him for this scheme. I'm kind of in the middle. I think he was fine value from where I had him ranked. And if he's your eventual replacement for Trent Williams, or if he maybe even starts at guard, although I really do like Colby Jones. Or sorry, Colby Jones. I saw Robert Jones and I combined him. Connor Colby, excuse me. I do really like Connor Colby. Pooney's not going anywhere for a while. Colton McKivitz is signed through. Oh, he must have signed an extension. I don't know. So yeah, I do think Carver Willis could potentially end up a starter. I don't know. I don't know if he's a high end starter in the league. Now you're taking a guy in the end of the fourth round, so I think it was decent value. But maybe he ends up just being depth long term. Effusion's Priceock. He is kind of buried on the depth chart here, but 6'3", tall corner, something they didn't have. Physical, can make up for getting beat with his size. Don't mind that at all. Late fourth round. Jaden Duggar, another developmental kind of linebacker, maybe more of an edge. Um, Listed at 6'5", 240. Out of Louisiana Christian. This just says Louisiana. Is that the same thing? uh, is that the same thing? I don't know. Yeah, I had him listed as a linebacker slash edge hybrid from Louisiana, so I don't know. But yeah, developmental guy. Their final pick was Enrique Cruz, also on the offensive line, in the fifth round. So even though they traded down in the first, they didn't, in my opinion, end up with like a great collection of players for the value. I don't know. This is probably one of my. It's harsh to say least favorite, or like I'm not saying I hate it at all, but even saying it's one of my least favorite drafts is kind of harsh. I just feel like a lot of teams kind of nailed their picks, and this was not one of my favorites. I don't know. A few more to go here. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was one of my favorites. This is probably a top five draft, in my opinion. You start off at pick 15, and you take Ruben Bain. Ruben Bain, I still thought there was a chance he may just go number 2 overall. I thought the Jets might just say, screw it, we don't care that he has short arms. He's the best pass rusher in the class, and take him at 2. All right, stuff's still going on, including storms. But we'll see if I can get through this without my internet cutting out, hopefully. This has been much longer than I anticipated, but we're still going. Ruben Bain at 15, great value. Like I said, Jermon McCoy was the steal of the draft. Ruben Bain is probably a top 5 steal of the draft. Like I said, if he had gone number 2 overall, there might have been some people surprised at that, just based on some things that have happened recently. But and the short arms, I don't really care. I don't really care about the short arms part, at least. The other thing that there is that's worth checking out. He's also not a Sam linebacker. I don't know. I don't know why they did this, but it is what it is. Josiah Trotter, really good linebacker pickup. They needed this badly. Their linebackers going into the season are going to be Anzalone and Saricha Dennis, with maybe Christian Roseboom getting reps. I mean, they desperately needed somebody to play linebacker with Levante David retiring. Al-Qadim Muhammad on the edge, by the way, is not a bad option. Like they had a decent edge group. I want to say this about their edge. They didn't need edge as badly as they needed just a linebacker. But when Ruben Bain is there at 15, you just take Ruben Bain. You know what I mean? Next up was Ted Hurst. I really liked this. The end of the third round. Um, big body guy. Do I expect him to be Mike Evans? No. I mean, there's not too many Mike Evans from the past 20 years. But to fill a need in what they didn't have in this room, yeah, I like this a lot. As there's David Sills. See, next up, Keontae Scott, fourth round. Sign me up. Also out of Miami. Great pick. Can blitz, maybe play some safety. I like that a lot. Devontae Capehart in the fifth round, rotational D tackle. I like that a lot. They needed one of those, and they got him. And they got one of those. They still have Cansey. Wow. Uh, how is that picture even there? I couldn't tell you. I could not tell you how that picture is there. Nash Hutmacher, looking like he's straight out of the 1920s. Um, sure. Don't think that's his picture, but all right. Fifth round, Billy Schruth or Schrouth. Makes me think of Robert Hainsey when they picked him. I like it. Don't know if he'll start right away. He had some injuries in Notre Dame. Probably won't start right away, but he doesn't have to, so can develop him behind Bredesen. I love that pick. And then they round out their draft with Bauer Sharp, tight end that I liked a fair bit. Um, yeah, I don't know where exactly he'll come in on the depth chart. Get Culped from last year. Shout out Foff. Get Culped. Not to be confused with Get Smacked, like I said earlier. But yeah, nice tight end prospect there for the Bucks. After that would be the Tennessee Titans. Just two more. We're almost done. Thank you for watching. If you watched to this point, you might be as crazy as me if you watch this. Carnell Tate in the top five was kind of wild. Didn't expect him to go that high, but was happy for him, certainly. As a Colts fan, not as happy. I think he could be their wide receiver two by the end of the year, I would say. We'll see if Calvin Ridley makes it through the season as a Titan. I don't know if anybody would be willing to take on that contract, so that might detract him from possibly getting traded. They did draft a couple of receivers last year that made me think they wouldn't draft the receiver high in DK and Iamanor, but they end up doing it anyway, despite also adding Wandale Robinson. It's a pretty nice receiving core for Cam Ward, and that's kind of scary. Keldrick Falk, uh, good run defender. The pass rush, I'm wondering if that's ever going to really develop in the NFL. As a run defender, really good pick. And then if Oladeji and Jermaine Johnson can get after the QB when they're in there, Jacob Martin as well. He's been a decent rotational pass rusher for his career. If Oladeo can at least be that, and Keldrick Falk can provide some element of a pass rush, this could be a really good group. I don't know, man. I was kind of low on him as like a mid day two guy or like mid second round guy. They traded up to get him in the first round. Didn't love that. They took Anthony Hill in the late second, which I actually liked a lot, and that's kind of the type of player I thought they would go for. Not to say they would have drafted Jacob Rodriguez early, but Anthony Hill gives you a little more than just, well, he's a linebacker. Like, I don't know how often he'll be rushing the passer, but there's a little bit of that element in his profile. So it's interesting to see them take Falk and then Anthony Hill because they're not similar at all, but for what you want them to do, I think they kind of conflict a little bit. Maybe that's not explaining that great, but as far as needing a linebacker, I think they certainly could have used one, and I thought Arville Reese was even in play for them at 4. So I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. I kind of thought they would just take Arville Reese at 4, and then take you know any other position rather than taking an edge and then a linebacker after that. But okay, um, Fernando Carmona, the second Fernando off the board, possible guard option for them. They right now have Cordell Volson as the best overall player between their right guards and their centers. So not great there. Nick Singleton, again, would Jeremiah Love have been in play at 4 if he did not go 3? Probably. They get Nick Singleton in the 5th round. I thought that was good value for him. Jackie Marshall in the 6th, rotational D tackle was fine. Way down here, there he is. Pat Coogan in the 6th, I thought that was a nice pick. I thought the Raiders might take a shot on him just as a developmental backup with Mendoza being there, but goes to the Titans in the 6th, good value. And then Jaron Kanak, another kind of undersized tight end, fullback type of option, is fine in the 7th. So kind of an odd draft for the Titans, but I don't dislike it. I guess if I did grade these, it would be kind of towards the back part of my favorites, but it's not a bad draft by any means. And finally, to finally end this stream and this video, the Washington Commanders at 7 took Sonny Styles. Amazing athlete. He's getting comparisons to Brian Urlacher. He's getting Ray Lewis. He's getting what Tremaine Edmonds should have been. Like, those are the types of things I've heard about Sonny Styles. I just hope he learns to play well against the run, because I think he can be a great cover defender as a linebacker, but I do kind of worry. I don't worry about his strength, but I worry about his just run defending as a whole. So now for the Commanders, they kind of need that, which I get is why they went linebacker. But they also do have Leo Chenal. So the combo of Chenal and Styles, and you got other guys in here as other options like Jordan McGee, Frankie Luvu, of course, is a hybrid. K'Lavon Chaisson's a hybrid. Some of these guys are just going to play the edge, but um, they've got bigger edges like Charles Menahu, Dietrich Wise, Dafe Owe. They paid a lot of money. Dorrance Armstrong's still here. Drake Jackson. Yes, well-known edge defender Javon Kinlaw. Goofy. But anyway, I really liked the pick of Styles at 7. I thought that was good value. It wasn't, 2 or 3 where it's like, whoa, a linebacker at 2 or 3. 7, that's palatable. And of course, I really like Styles as an Ohio State fan, so didn't mind that. They did not have a second round pick. In the 3rd, they went with Antonio Williams out of Clemson. He was a guy I was putting in the 1st round very early on. Didn't have a great season. Nobody at Clemson did. But early 3rd round pick, I was fine with that. Joshua Josephs, they did come back and take a smaller edge player later on. Again, smaller, speed rush, try to get after the QB. I get that. Katron Allen in the 6th, the other Penn State back. Good pick. Another, nice late round find, I think he's going to be. They brought in Rashad White. They brought in Jerome Ford. You still have Bill, old Bill, Jacory Krosky Merritt. And you had Katron Allen. I think that kind of quietly became one of the better rounded, complete running back rooms without having a true star in this mix over the past year. On the offensive line, they added Matt Goblin, or sorry, Golbin, Goblin. No, Matt Golbin out of Michigan State. Uh, Goblin D's. Matt Golbin. Sorry, I'm just going to not say his name anymore. Out of Michigan State, backup center option. Try to develop him. And the final player to cover, last and possibly least, it's Athan Kaliakmanis out of Rutgers. Now, QB3, sure, I guess. Would I have rather taken Nussmeier than Athan Kaliakmanis? Yeah. So that's kind of that's it. Okay, that's all there is to say. For the guy, if he ends up being on the practice squad or whatever, I hope he has a long NFL career. I hope he lasts a long time in the league. And of course, they do have Sam Hartman there, so that's probably the guy he's battling with to be the QB3. But yeah, interesting QB to get drafted. So that's it. I'm finally done. If you watch, thanks for watching. If you watch any of my mock draft or any of my football content on the channel over the past year, thank you. Um, I feel like I've made a lot, and I put a lot of time into doing this stuff. I don't know if I'm gonna put in as much time over the next year. I'd like to put more time into gaming and streaming, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that is my full entire NFL draft recap, and I did not expect to be talking about it for 3.5 hours, but here we are. So I guess the video is probably going to be shorter, but yeah, thanks for watching. Godspeed. See you in the next one. All that good stuff. And that's it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.